Okay. Back for another episode of the Coast Boys podcast. My name is Izzy. I'm joined today by my co-host Gabe and our guest today, Shane Huff. Shane, how you doing?
Doing good, thank you.
So Shane, we're really excited to have you on today. This has been a long time in the making. Whenever we talk to guests and tell them like, hey, we had you on the list. Like you were one of the first ones we had on the list. It was you, Udi, it was like 10 people that...
Yeah, it was like a 10-person list.
And we just took forever to ask you. We kind of wanted to get the ball rolling before we made an offer to come on, but we really appreciate you sharing some of your time.
Appreciate being here.
So for those that don't know you, want to just explain a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. No, first off, let me just say I think you guys are doing a tremendous job. Great service. And I think this is a great learning opportunity for a lot of kids in our local community. So congrats to you guys for stepping up and taking the chance on it. Not everybody's willing to do that. Yeah, I'm from this area. I was born in Napa, but I grew up in Ukiah and Hopland and graduated in 93 from Ukiah High School. Once I grew up playing all the sports, just like most kids do in these small communities. I wrestled, I played basketball, baseball, and then soccer. I gravitated towards soccer mid-school through high school, and really enjoyed the sport just because of how active you are. You know, you're not standing around much. You're not waiting for a fly ball to be hit to you or a ground ball. You're constantly engaged. So I really gravitated to the sport because of how active you were, and I enjoyed that piece of it. But I didn't make a full commitment probably until my junior year in high school, because, there were a lot of volunteer coaches. I didn't really have my first actual soccer coach that played the game and grew up with the game until I was about 15. I was kind of self-taught in many ways, where we'd go off to a tournament and get blown out 8 or 9-0 by Pleasanton, the Ballistics. And then I'd ask my parents, hey, do you mind if we hang out a little bit and watch them during the warm-up? Like, why are they so different than myself? Why are they so different from my team? What are making them stand out and beat us so terribly bad every time we play them? And so I'd watch them. And that's how I taught myself how to juggle, how to balance the ball on my foot, how to do different types of moves. I just simply watched.
And so what was it that they were doing?
They were, just technically so much better, so much more proficient. I didn't know how to do a scissors. I didn't know how to do a lunge. I didn't know how to beat somebody off the dribble. I could just keep up with kids pretty much just because of athleticism and speed. But they were different because they could do things that were fluid with the ball and just very smooth on the ball, because they were being taught at a very young age how to manipulate the ball with different surfaces of their feet, be calm, cool, collective on it. And so I just took what I watched and what they did on the ball during the warm-ups, and I'd come home at night under the street lamp in front of my house, and I'd practice until my parents yelled at me to get in the house all by myself. And I did that for many years as I was growing up. And then when I was 15 years old, I had an opportunity to try out for a team that was going to go to Europe, and it was called Team USA. So they had different teams throughout the United States, and they had, I'd say, about 4 teams from California. So they had a top team, a second team, third team, etc. And so I went to like Fresno area and tried out, and there was just hundreds and hundreds of kids. And I was lucky enough to make the top team. And from there, I had a coach. His name was Jose. He was like 5'2", but he had played the game at a high level. He understood the game. He knew the game. And I learned so much during my time with him on the weekends and training. And then we went over to Europe and we got to play. So it was kind of my first experience outside of California, Northern California. It was probably pretty much all I played is when I went over to Europe and played for a month.
Where'd you guys play at?
We got to go over to Amsterdam, where we trained for a week at a youth setting and got to live in where the youth trained and lived in their dormitories for a week. And then we went to the Gothia Cup in Sweden, which at the time was the largest youth tournament in the world. I think over 850 teams participate in that tournament at the time, and I believe it's still that big. And so we played in that tournament. And then we traveled and played in the Holland Cup and then the Dana Cup. So we went to 3 different countries, all the Scandinavian countries, and we did quite well. We lost 1-0 to a team from France, in the quarterfinals of the Ukiah Cup, and it was just a really neat setting. The intro or the ceremonies were in their Olympic Stadium in Gothenburg. And then the finals you got to play at the finals if you made it to the finals in that big stadium. And it was packed. It was great fun. And we had great success and just a great experience. And then we went to the Holland Cup and we lost in the semifinals to a team from Taiwan. And you don't think of the Taiwanese people being very big. But what I remember them is they were massive individuals. They were huge kids. And I remember my coach just looking at us saying, I just don't understand how they're U15, because they looked like they were U18, U19. They were massive and fast. And so that was the semifinals, and they beat us 2-1. Or we would have played in their a professional stadium in the finals, which was packed. And so that was a great experience as well. And the team that we lost to in the Ukiah Cup in Sweden, we beat in the knockout stages of that Holland Cup. And then we went to the Dana Cup where we played a year up. And I think we lost in the first knockout stages in that one, which was still a great success because we were playing a year up. But the overall experience as a kid, I mean, coming from the United States and growing up during the time period I did, soccer wasn't on TV. I wasn't exposed to it. I didn't get to watch it. Like growing up, I was a Los Angeles Dodgers fan, and I knew their lineup inside and out. And so my brother and I would play wiffle ball every day just about. And I knew what stances the batters, who would come in what situation, what they would do, what pitcher they would bring in, what pitch they would throw. I mean, because you watch the game. You listen to it on the radio. I'd go to sleep at night. My dad would put the Dodgers game on the radio, and I'd listen to it. We didn't have that as a kid for soccer. During that time, it was just football, basketball, and primarily baseball and football at the time. And that's what we grew up with. Where today, the kids are exposed to soccer 24/7. Which I think is a great thing for kids to be able to have an opportunity to look up to higher level players, professional type players, and dream to be like them. Like I dreamt to be like Tim Hardaway of the Golden State Warriors, point guard back in the day, or Brett Butler, the leadoff hitter for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Those are things that I could look to and want to be like and try to be like and go out in the court and try to mimic their play. And so I think kids have that opportunity much more nowadays, the exposure on TV. So I got to do that during my 8th grade year, going into my freshman year. And again, wonderful experience. And that was about the time period where I had to make a decision. Do I stay local on a volunteer-based Ukiah Pumas, which was great growing up, and great, dads and moms that participated in that, or go to Santa Rosa and play for Santa Rosa United. So my sophomore year, there wasn't really enough kids around to play. And so me and a couple buddies played for Santa Rosa United and played for them for the next 3 years, and played with some great players from Santa Rosa United, Justin Sealander, Roegan Mitter, guys that were part of the national team, and just some great people that I got to play with in Santa Rosa. And that really opened up some good doors for myself at the time as well. So I did that as well, played through the high school season, and I had a lot of success in high school. I was all NBL, most valuable player in the NBL, most valuable player of the North Coast section. My senior year, most valuable player of the All-Star game. So I had some great success, and it wasn't really just talent. It was hard work. That's what I tell a lot of these kids around here. It's just your mindset. If you have an open mindset and a mindset that wants to work hard, that wants to learn, and you believe in yourself and you give everything you got to what you want to do, you can make it, and you can change the cards that you were dealt and make them better. And I'm living proof of that, because that's what I did. With that, though, I did have a lot of good support from my family. My mom and dad are outstanding.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, during this process, were your parents supportive? Did they push you a certain direction towards a typical career path, or what was that like?
No, I'm a first generation graduate from my family. I didn't really have much, we had no idea what the process was to get into college. No clue. And how all that worked. My parents were very just great people, supported. It didn't matter what I did. My dad would drive me and my friends that played soccer that didn't have, they'd take us to go play for tournaments with the Santa Rosa team or play for those teams. Didn't grow up with a ton of money. My mom stayed at home. She raised us in regards as a stay-at-home mom. My dad still to this day works 12 to hours a day. Back then he'd work 16 hours a day driving truck. So we didn't have a ton of money. I didn't have the money to really go to soccer camps or have the Adidas or Nike outfits back then. But what they instilled in me was hard work. And if you work hard and you're a good person, you can do well for yourself. And so I think they established some really good habits in me that are still with me today that I try to preach to my student athletes on a daily basis.
Nice. And so when they told you, or when you told them that you wanted to continue pursuing soccer at the collegiate level, they backed that and they were totally fine with you. Was that the dream job for you, was to go pro? And
Yeah, I think every kid, especially young men, and Izzy can attest to this at Mendocino College, it's having to talk them off the cliff because everyone that comes to Mendocino College thinks they're going to go play pro.
Yeah.
And I have to remind them, you wouldn't be at Mendocino College if you're going to go play pro. Let's take one step at a time. And so obviously that was something I didn't know much about. There wasn't opportunity back then for soccer in the United States like there is with the MLS now. And there wasn't much soccer on TV at all. I think the first game I watched, I was a junior in high school, and Bayern Munich came over and was playing an exhibition game in Florida. And I just remember watching Bayern Munich from Germany, just like, that's how it's played? Because that's a whole nother level what I'm used to seeing. And
That's what I was going to ask. When you were a young kid playing in those cups and those tournaments over there, what was the main difference that you would see between your team and them? Like, what were the things going through your mind? Like, these guys are so much better, or they just played different?
Yeah, I think athleticism, we were really athletic, and we were fast and we were strong. But with that team, though, too, I had a lot of young men of Latino descent that played with me on that Team USA team that could play ball, that were from, Fresno and the Central Valley, that probably were migrant families, right? That came over and they did grow up with soccer. They played it in Mexico, and they were good. They were as good as those guys over there. And I think the combination of somebody like myself, because they elected me as the captain of that team, which was a huge honor, and it was a team vote to be the captain of that team, which was even a bigger honor. So the kids voted for it. They just saw my work ethic. And so you bring somebody that has that drive and the work ethic with that skill and talent, and you just bring it together and you believe in each other. As we've all said before with soccer, it's a universal language. It doesn't matter, right? It bridges gaps between communities. It brings people together. And, and those guys and I, we just all got along great, and we're talented. But I think overall, the difference between us was experience, with people like me coming from little Ukiah. It's just the experience of knowing how to play in big games. And those guys watch it and are part of that day in and day out. Where here, growing up, I didn't have that experience.
Damn. I cut you off, though. You were saying something. What did you ask him?
I asked him if that was always the plan, if you wanted to go pro, and if your parents supported that.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, it was probably mid-junior year of my high school season. I realized, from a student perspective, it wasn't like I was a masterpiece in the classroom. I'd rather be out running around playing than sitting in a classroom. And so really what grounded me and really what helped me through getting my education was sports. It really, truly made a difference in my life and helped me stay focused. And what I realized was I saw how hard my mom and dad worked. And sometimes I get a little emotional with them because they're such good people that they gave everything to us kids. And I realized how hard and what they sacrificed, that I wanted to hopefully put myself in a situation that I could give back to my family, but also have choices for my own. And so I decided probably about my junior year, is like, if that's going to happen and I'm not going to struggle paycheck to paycheck, then I need to get serious in the classroom, and I need to continue to stay grounded and on point on getting to where I need to be. And that has to be through college. I didn't know, but that's what I figured. And I knew then that I wanted to be involved in helping people like myself that didn't have a clue what the heck they were doing, that could give them an opportunity to be seen, to be heard, and have choices in life. And I think a lot of our young people in the small rural areas sometimes struggle with not being seen, not being heard, and not knowing what direction to go. That's how I was. Mm-hmm. And it was no fault of my family. We just didn't know. We didn't know. And so I knew my junior year that I had to stay grounded and I had to keep working. And I had to out hustle people. I had to outwork people because I wasn't, say, the most technical kid. But by God, you weren't going to beat me to the ball. You weren't going to win the tackle. I was going to drive you to the ground. I was going to break your spirit. I was going to break your will to beat you in the game or whatever you were. That was my mindset. And I just out hustled and outworked. I trained every day because that was my goal, just to get to college. And I knew that I couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford college, and I knew I wanted to play. And so, I just dedicated myself. So my junior year was my last year of playing multiple sports, and going into my senior year, I just decided I was going to focus on soccer, and that was what I was going to do, and just go for it and see if I can earn a scholarship. And Coach Tobin, from who's now the head coach at San Jose State, saw me play at a tournament in the Bay Area, and I was playing the number 7. I grew up playing the sweeper position. That's what they played a lot back when I grew up. And pretty much the reason why is that you didn't have to be the most skillful. You just had to be an incredible athlete and anticipate and run people down. And that's what I could do. And so that's what I did, is play sweeper. But then when I went to the Santa Rosa United, it was a U19 team, and I was one of the younger kids on the team. They had a guy named Miguel Huerta and Roy Gamitter that were on the national team, and they played those positions. And so I went out to the number 7, and he saw me play in that position, and I happened to have a heck of a game. And he talked to me after the game, and that's kind of how the ball got rolling at Cal State University Bakersfield in 92. And then in my junior year, I raised some money and I went to Bolivia for a month prior to my senior year. A good friend of mine and I, Pete Lacasse, who we now have a scholarship foundation named after for MCSA that gives money back to families in need so kids can play. Him and I were going to go. And so we got a lot of donations to go down there and to go play. And he happened to pass away Memorial Day weekend before we were going to go. A sudden death, yeah. He was my best buddy, and we traveled to and from Santa Rosa together. Yeah, it was hard. That was definitely a setback for me because I'd never seen that before, dealt with death, especially somebody that young, something so sudden, and an incredibly gifted young man. So I still went. And so I went and I played, and I went in honor really of Pete and just to give everything I had to go live it up and give my best. And so I went down there for a month and I played and trained with their coaches. And it was a team in Santa Cruz, Bolivia called Taiwichi. And they produced just tons of professional players throughout Bolivia. Marco Echeverri, who played for, the national team, but for Bolivia, but he played for DC United. They're one of the all-time Hall of Famer for DC United, and played for Colo-Colo in Chile. And then Jaime Moreno, he was actually down there when I was playing, playing for a team called Blooming, which was the professional team for Taiwichi. They produced some great players. So at the end of that month, they approached me and asked if I would stay and train with their top team during my senior year. And I really thought about just staying. It's like, what an opportunity. And one of the biggest differences down there and what I've noticed was just the speed of play. You know, at that time I was getting sharper on the ball, I was more technical, but it was just how fast they could do it versus what I could do it, or the kids from the United States could do it. It was just 2-3 levels above us. Just they were faster at what they were able to do with the ball than what we were. And that happened. You adjust to that. You get better with it as you play at that level. But I remember telling them, I'll be back. I promise you I'll come back. But I'm going to go back for my senior year. I have to go back for my senior year. So I came back and I did my senior year here. And like I said, my senior year, I had a great season. The team was average. It's pretty much like it is just about almost every year is in Ukiah. I think we're trying to make that next step now, but we were average. And but I worked hard and I was honored, like I said, with a lot of accolades during my senior year, and that was pretty cool. And after I graduated, I went back. I flew down there. I didn't know where I was going to live. I didn't know what I was going to do, and but I knew I was going to play ball, and I knew I was going to take a year off of college, and I went down there. And when I say I went down there, I'll tell you guys, it's a third world country. When I was there was no paved roads, no stoplights. There's 650,000 people surrounded by jungle. It's like nothing you've ever seen.
How'd you get around? Like, you don't speak the
I
language?
did not. Well, I had 3 years of Spanish in high school.
Okay.
That's enough.
Well,
That totally got me through it.
So you're able to say hi and bye.
Hola,
Yeah.
no, si. Those are the 3 words.
Jeez, I can't imagine being in your position and just being, I'm going to just get my stuff and go
That's
to
so
Bolivia.
ballsy.
And yeah.
Yeah, and again, my parents were super supportive. You know, they're just great people.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So cool.
And so I went, but I'll tell you, and this is what's so awesome about the game of football is it is a universal language. You don't have to speak the same. And it's such a simple game. You know, you just need a ball and ball in one person, and you can get an incredible workout. You can get better on your own if you so choose to, right? And then if you have another person, now you can play one-on-one and play to a trash can or something. And you know, it's such a great sport. And what you find with these countries that have nothing, they're so open. Like, it didn't matter, you know, that I'm some gringo from the United States and I go nowhere to live. You go in and they just open their door and say, come in. We don't have a lot, but we're going to share it with you. And that's the type of people they are. They're great people. The Bolivianos are phenomenal people. Absolutely love them.
Do you still keep in touch with any of them?
I do. I've talked to so I lived with a family when I went down there by chance. I ran into a family whose dad was one of the directors of that professional team, Blooming. And she saw me at the airport. And she was dropping her brother off at the airport. And I heard my name called. Shane. I'm like, what the heck? Who knows me? I didn't tell you that down there. And so I turn around and it's Susie was her name, Susie. Uh-huh. And she goes, you know, in her broken English, what you doing here? And I'm like, I'm here to play some soccer. Where are you living? I don't know. I have no idea. So she literally just said, get in the car. I'm going to take you home to and tell my parents that you're here. And they just took me in, and that's where I lived. It was just awesome. Total by chance. But I'll tell you what was awesome. If you want to learn a language, you got to go and just totally embrace yourself in their culture.
I've heard that so many times, but I mean, it's ballsy, like you said, to just go up and leave and just take your stuff and go. But that's the best way to learn a language and get to know the culture, right?
Yeah, and you have to. So like, you know, you learn the La Linea system and where the buses go and the vans, you know, and they're supposed to hold 8 people, but they have 25. Or the bus that's supposed to hold 30 people and it has 100, you know, and you're holding on to the edge and outside the bus or the vans and you're just smiling. I was just like, dude, I'm living this. This is crazy. You know, it's like, I wish there was like a GoPros, like so I could show my family, like, what I'm doing. I probably wouldn't want to show my mom hanging out of a van, but you know, she'd be pretty worried about that because it's not the safest, but that's just how you lived. It was incredible. And I remember every once in a while I'd take a taxi and I remember thinking, man, this is a long ride home. Like, why is this taking so long? And as I became more fluent in the language and understanding the streets, I realized they were just going in circles. So they could get more money. Yeah. So I remember, you know, I would say about a month, I stayed down there about 7 months and about a month and a half into it, you know, you start to get to know a couple of the drivers that are in that little vicinity that I'm in, part of Santa Cruz. And I remember I just started speaking Spanish to him and he kind of like froze. He's like, yeah, I know what you've been doing. Now you need to go this way, then you need to take a left, and the house is right here on the right, you know. And I was able to speak fluent by the time I came back. It was incredible. And I highly recommend opportunities like that for our youth. It puts a lot of things in perspective, not just from the fact that, you know, you come from the United States where you're really blessed on what you have and the opportunities that are here for people. And when you go down there, it's not the fact that you're just blessed upon what you see, what you have here, and appreciate it more, but then you understand there's wonderful people in this world. And the world's so much bigger than you, way bigger than you, and so much more important than you. And how do you fit into that puzzle? How do you fit into the matrix of the world? And that was something that really opened my eyes up for me personally, that it's a small world with wonderful people in it. And if we can all just respect each other and love each other, the world would be a better place.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And why Bolivia? Like, when you and your friend are planning that trip, like,
great
did you guys have connections
Yeah,
there?
we did. So there was a guy named Connie Constantine. So he coached me and Peter when we were on our U16. Our first year was Santa Rosa United. And he was from the Bay Area. He's been all over now. He's one of the directors up for the Timbers up in Washington or Oregon, and then was a director with the Houstonians in Houston. He's actually the head coach right now, I believe, of the Jamaican futsal team, national team right now. He's really big into futsal. Wonderful man, lots of energy, and he liked me. And he just saw a work ethic and saw, I think, somebody that really loved to play and really gave a good effort. And so he talked to my dad and I about Santa Cruz, Bolivia, and that he'd been down there, and he was organizing a group to go down there and train with the Taiwichi for that summer. And so I was like, sure, let's do it. And so we raised a bunch of money to make it happen. So that was my connection down there. It was Connie Constantine, who's a great guy.
That's awesome. Okay, so then that's before your senior year, after your senior year. What are the next steps to get to college?
So then I came home. It was around March of 93. And I tried out for a semi-pro team called the United States Interregional Soccer League, the Shasta Scorchers. I had grandparents that lived there. And so it was a place I could stay and live. And I heard they were having open tryouts. And so I went up there and I tried out. And there was a ton of guys trying out for this team. It was in Reading. And I made the team. I was the youngest guy on the team. I started on the team. And so I played there all spring through the summer. I stayed in touch with Coach Tobin because he had offered me a scholarship to go right after I graduated. It was 94, spring of 94. For the fall of 93 is when it was my scholarship, because I graduated in the spring of 93. And so I told him I'd be back. I'd honor it and I appreciate it. And I did. I contacted him when I came back, and he offered me a scholarship again. I happened to play against a guy named Leslie O'Connor and Jeremy Gunn, who played for the Chico Rooks, which is pretty close to Reading. And at the time, Leslie O'Connor was an alumnus from Ireland, but played at Cal State Bakersfield for 4 years. And Jeremy Gunn was an assistant coach with Cal State Bakersfield. He's now the head coach at Stanford University. And so they got to see me play a couple different times. And so they gave me some scholarship, and I accepted it, and I took it. And then from there, I went to Cal State Bakersfield, and I played there for 4 years. And that's where I met my good buddy, my best buddy, Joe Munoz, who's my brother-in-law, and had the honor to play with him. And we were a Division II program, but we played with all the top D1 programs. My freshman year, we played University of San Diego, who was 13th in the country for D1. We beat them 2-0. We beat Cal Poly Slow. We beat in spring ball. We beat Stanford. We beat St. Mary's out of Moraga. We beat Fresno State my senior year. We were good. and we won. We went to we won league 3 times. We were 3-time regional finalists, 2 Final Four appearances, and 1 national championship our senior year. So we got to go out on a high on our senior year.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Did you and Joe graduate in the same year?
We graduated from playing, and then Joe got drafted in the MLS and went and played with New York Metro Stars, which is now called the New York Red Bulls.
Okay.
In '96, and then I was coaching, and during that time, club soccer and in Bakersfield, and coaching high school at Stockdale High School at the time, and so I was going to potentially graduate before Joe because he had taken some time off. And then, so we didn't graduate academically at the same time, but with our playing careers, we did at the same time.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so, you know, and like I tell all the young men, one of the greatest, you know, why were we so successful? Why, you know, that same year UCLA won the national championship in '97 and we tied them 1-1. We were good. I mean, we could play and beat anybody at any given day. We were, had some incredible players. And I think more than anything is what I want to instill in my teams is that belief that, you know, refuse to lose mentality. You know, it's a mindset. And if you put in the work and you do the time, it doesn't matter how talented you are. If you have a great foundational work ethic and drive and refuse to lose mentality, you're going to be successful and you're going to do well.
How do you instill that into your players? That's the hardest thing because I think everyone can agree with that. Obviously, when you have that kind of mindset, you're going to find success eventually, right?
Yeah.
So, but how do you find that in maybe a kid who's really talented but doesn't necessarily care that much?
Yeah. I think a lot of it is accountability. You're having to teach kids personal responsibility and accountability. I'll take this young man, Izzy. He came to me and he had a certain mindset about him. He didn't necessarily fully believe at first what his capabilities were, didn't necessarily fully buy into the things that we were doing or wanting to do, and didn't necessarily hold himself accountable. He'd always look at somebody else and ask, why are they doing that? And never look at himself.
Yeah.
And
sounds like Izzy.
And so I think one of the things that some players really respond, some players struggle is I don't let that slide. It's like I'm not afraid to have tough conversations, and I'm not afraid to hold them accountable at a very high level and a high standard. Yes, it's not Stanford University or UCLA, but by God, I'm going to treat it with the same mindset and same attitude. So that way, when you transfer to that next program, that next level, you're going to be prepared. You're not going to be surprised to what the expectations are. You actually might be even a little bit disappointed where their expectations are from where you came from me, because I would be doing a huge disservice to all the young players and players that I coached if I didn't have that mindset, if I didn't have that drive, or I didn't hold them accountable to tell them that, yeah, I appreciate the fact that you think you're working hard. And this is what I tell players all the time. I'm sure I told him. I appreciate that. And I know that you think you are, but I'm here to tell you you're not. There's so much more in you. You have so much more ability level. You have so much more potential. It's a mindset, young man, and you have to hold yourself at a high standard. And that's one thing this kid did. It took him a little bit, but I don't let up. See, I'm stubborn, and I don't quit on kids. I don't let up on them, and I never let up on this guy. And he bought in, and this kid came in probably, I'd say, about 215, 210 maybe, wouldn't you say?
Not that heavy, but I was pretty heavy.
You were pretty heavy.
I was pretty heavy, yeah.
He got down to about 175, 180.
Yeah.
He lost significant weight.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I told him, if you want to play at the next level, you got to get slim. You got to be more lean. You got to put in the work. And it's in a lot of our young guys and especially the small rural areas, they're not held accountable at high school. They're not held accountable. They don't have a club program. They play men's league. There's no accountability at men's league. You show up 5 minutes before kickoff and you go play. If you show up to practice, you show up to practice. And you show up on Sunday, you get to play if you're good enough. Because you can show up to practice during the week, but if you're not good enough, they're still not going to play you. But they're going to play the guy that is good enough. That doesn't teach any life lessons, right? That's not teaching how the real world works and what it means to be the best that you can be. And so instilling that mentality and that attitude takes a lot of commitment. And there's a lot of times you come home, or I'm sitting with my wife or my dad, my mom, Joe, my brother. I mean, my family is just phenomenal because it wears on you because you care so much. I care so much about him, and I want him to be better than me. I want him to do more than me. And I mean that. And I think he knows that. And at times he probably thought I hated him, or I know he hated me at times, right? Because it's a tough love. But ultimately they know I love them, and they know that I'm going to go to bat for them, and I'm going to do what I can for them. It's a two-way street though. And sometimes players just want, especially at the young age, at 18 years old, they don't have that right mindset, and they come into your program with that mindset of, I know best, I know who I am, just let me play. Right,
and that's my next question. Have you ever had players who don't respond well to that, and they're saying, dude, leave me alone, I'm going to do my own thing, and then just walk out the door?
Oh, yeah, and I tell them, don't let the fence hit you on the way out, because it doesn't work, right? It just doesn't work. You sit down with them. It's not one time. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like with him, Izzy is a prime example, who's a stubborn young man. But I love that he questions, right? I mean, you want players that want answers. Mm-hmm. You want that because it means they want to learn.
Yeah, they're invested.
But you got to take the time to have those conversations. And him and I had lots of one-on-one conversations. You take the time with those players, and I do with them all. You sit them down. You call them out as a group, but they know you're talking about them. You call them out in front of the group, like, hey, that's not good enough. That's not acceptable. You're better than that. There's lots of ways to try to push buttons. Do you always get it right? No. I'd be lying to you if I said I get it right every time, because you don't. But you got to reflect on what you do. You got to think about how you did it, and you want to change and be better. And there's lots of times, I'm sure, probably even with Izzy, I went and shook his hand and said, you know what, I was a little bit too hard on you. You got to show some humility as well as a coach. And I feel I do that, but you don't give up on kids, you work on them. But eventually at some point, because there's more than just that one kid, if they're not going to mesh, they're not going to buy in, they're not going to do it, you got to let them go, because ultimately it just breaks the team down, because they're about themselves and not about what's best for the team. And that does happen, and it's a bummer. But even to this day, there's a lot of those young men you still run into, and you still shake hands with them, right? You still talk to them, right. You still say hi, and you still care about them. You still want them to have success. But some kids are not ready to get it, and sometimes it might be 5 or 6 years before they do get it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, they're gonna learn eventually.
Yeah,
some learn quicker than others. Yeah. Others takes a few years, but they're gonna learn, and sometimes the hard way.
Exactly. And again, and hopefully they look back and they understand and realize that everything that was done for a reason. It was to try to make them better people, better young men, better young women, stronger young men, future leaders in our communities. And giving them that belief that, hey man, if I don't talk to you, that's when I'd be worried. But if I'm talking to you, you should be happy, because that means I care and I believe that you're better than what you are.
Yeah. That's what always gave me a sense of okay, I'm good. Because it was always, is he what the heck, guys, you're doing this? But if he were just one day ignore me or not even say what's up, because I'll say this, you're right. I was very stubborn. I was very, I don't even know. It's just so strange to think about nowadays, because I'm just I'm completely different, but I do agree with what you say, and I understand. But it was always on the field. It was never outside. That was any hostile feelings. It was never personal. It was always very much constructive criticism. Now that I look back, obviously nobody likes to be told that they're playing bad or they're doing it wrong, but I can kind of see where you're coming from, because you've been there and you've done that. So when you see these kids going through your program, you're like, look, I need you to understand and get it through your head. That's not good enough. I know your potential. I know that you can be better, but it's not good enough right now.
Yeah.
And that was always our thing. It's it was never anything attacking personality or nothing. It was always constructive criticism.
Yeah. And again, I think some kids, especially 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, and young men, there's that machoism, it's a hard ego when you have somebody, especially when you've never been challenged. You know, there's a lot of young men in our area that come and play for us have never been challenged, never been told that, you know what, hey, you got potential, but what you're doing right now is not good enough, but we're going to make it better. And there's always, you know, it's never me saying you're terrible and walk away. And that's not good. It's about, hey, your decision making right now isn't good enough. So here's how we're going to fix it. Or your 1v1 defending is atrocious. Here's how we're going to fix it. And we work on it. But that's only if they have a growth mindset, if they're willing to want to learn. And a lot of times when you tell somebody that they think that they're good enough and you're telling them that they can improve on these areas that they already think they're good at, especially with 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, sometimes they have a hard time accepting that and that they just aren't mature enough. They just don't get it right now.
Yeah. And a lot of the people that go through your program or go to play there are big fishes in small ponds from this area. Like they've been catered to their whole life and they've been groomed and think they are the best.
That's exactly what I was going to
You know
say.
what I'm saying?
I was the same way.
in their area. And if you go there and all of a sudden you're being told that you're not good enough, it's like, what are you talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's their mentality. That's their mindset.
Yeah. They come in, many of these kids come in the mindset that they shouldn't be there. And that's the first thing they got to get over. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, man, you're here. It's maybe not the conventional route where you're not going to a 4-year school and playing right away, but that doesn't mean you're bad. It just means we got to work on stuff. And sometimes it's not just soccer, it's time management. It's making good choices off the field. It's eating and sleeping correctly. It's hitting the weight room in the off season and doing our fitness and weight training program in the off season, showing up to the 6 a.m. weight training. You know, it's everything that builds up to the season that they don't understand that's what makes your season. So I think it's a huge learning and a steep learning curve. And I say that to these guys when they come in. It's like, listen, you're going to be a part of something that you're not accustomed to, that you're not used to. You're going to have a coach that's going to challenge you every single day to be better. Is going to challenge you when you don't show up to practice because you don't feel like it. I'm going to call you and say, where are you at? Or you're going to show up to practice and you're going to run because you didn't show up to practice, or you showed up 20 minutes late because you thought you could stroll in when you want and how you want. It's like, no, that's not how things work here. We're a team and we're going to do this together and we're going to work hard. And so again, unlike, you know, like the Santa Rosa JCs of the world, where you're in bigger areas where you have lots of kids come into play, you have choices, right? You're like, well, see you later. We don't have that. You know, and for me, when I took over the women's program in 2011, you know, I went away for 18 years. So before anything, and this is for a lot of young people, as I left this area, I honestly never thought I'd come back. And nothing bad about the area. I just thought I'd never come back. I mean, I was in Southern California coaching club, high school. Then I went to Durango, Colorado and coached at Fort Lewis College there, a Division II program, and worked with Jeremy Gunn at that program for a year. Then I went to graduate school and coached at University of New Mexico with Jeremy Fishbein. And I was surrounded by lots of great coaches, lots of great people, lots of great players at all different levels. And then I was also part of, ODP programs and club programs where all these people were just great coaches and great people that you learn from. And you also learn from the people that aren't so good, probably more so.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I would honestly say I played for a guy in the Central Coast Roadrunners. And again, one thing I learned from this guy more than anything was what you tell people matters. Don't blow smoke in their face. And this coach was great at telling you one thing, but doing something different. Whatever he thought was the most popular thing with the most popular guy, that's what he was going to do as a coach, not what was best or what he said he was going to follow through on, right?
Wait, what do you mean by that? Like, can you give an example?
Yeah, so, you know, he may tell you, like, you're going to, you're playing really well right now, and you're doing extremely well, and you're going to start this weekend.
And then you don't start that.
And then you don't start or even play.
Gotcha. So he's not transparent.
Not transparent. Not honest.
Okay.
So that coach I had zero respect for. Just not a good coach at all. Not a good coach. Because your word is everything.
Yeah.
Right. And I learned at that moment that as I was into coaching, that I'm going to be truthful and honest with my players, and it's going to hurt their feelings, but at least they know where they stand on the team and where they're at. And we're going to not just tell them, but then we're going to figure out, for example, it might be, a player says, I want to go play at Stanford. It's like, all right, let's take a step back.
Relax, guy.
All right, let's see where we're at, and let me give you my personal evaluation on where you are.
You're a realist.
And then academically as well, right? And then let's find the program that's going to meet your needs, that's going to challenge you, but yet you're going to have an opportunity to have success and play and get some great experiences, right? You have to be willing to do that. Where I don't think many coaches are willing to have those tough conversations. And I honestly know that there's a lot of good coaches that have a lot of good activities and lay out the cones and they look beautiful on paper, but their delivery of their practice is terrible. And the delivery is everything, because you can have somebody that does something very minimal to something that is very high tech and super complex. But this person over here's delivery of the message, the tone, the expectations, the standards at which they hold the players to is so much higher than this person that lays out a beautiful practice plan that doesn't say much or do much. Because there's not much instruction, there's not much accountability. They just let the players do what they want, how they want, at the level they feel that the players want to do it at. Is that going to make them better? Absolutely not. There has to be expectations and standards. And again, that going back again, it's draining as a coach. It's emotional because you're wanting the best for the kids, and it's a constant battle to keep those standards up with those 18 and 19 and 20-year-olds, because they slip quite a bit. And so having to keep that standard high and keep them going is a challenge, definitely.
Yeah. This is a great conversation, but I want to kind of go back to when it all started, like coaching after college. So when did you make that transition from player to coach?
Yeah. So
and when you were in school, was this the career path that you were kind of going after? Did you have plans? I don't even know what you majored in. What did you major in?
I changed my major because, like I said, I had no clue what the heck I was going to do. 3 different times.
Okay.
So at first I was going to be history because I enjoy history. I enjoy reading and watching history. And then I was like, what am I going to do with history? Right? It's like, okay, I can become a teacher, which is not a bad thing because that's what I do now. But at the time I wanted to be a Division I head coach. That was my goal. I decided I wanted to coach when I was a junior in high school. I'd come home and train kids around here, do things in the summer around here. As a junior in high school, when I wanted to have choices, and I went that route. I started coaching right away in college from my freshman year on. And again, my parents didn't have a ton of money. They had a ton of love and a ton of support. And so for me, I didn't want to ever ask my mom and dad for money, and I never did. I had my scholarship, and I did what I had to do to make money, and I worked, and I made it work. And that's probably why I'm hard on these guys too, because I had less than most of these guys. They're driving up in cars that are my dream cars at a young age, and they're in college. And I had a 2-door, no air conditioning, oxidized paint job, 1980 Honda Civic hatchback in college in Bakersfield, no air conditioning, right? And again, I worked, I plowed through it. I made it happen, and through hard work and through all of that. And again, these are experiences you draw from, and the expectations that you have with your kids now is that if I can do that, these kids can do it, right? There's no reason why you can't do it. You have all the ability. Most of them live at home. So you have people cooking you meals. I'm looking for pennies and nickels in my seat in my car, and between the car and the console and in my seat cushions, to go buy a 25-cent burrito back in the day at Taco Bell, because I didn't have anything to eat. I very little to go off of. And so between the part-time job and all that, I made it happen. And so I started coaching straight my freshman year in college. And I worked with a team called the Kern County Warriors. It was a girls team, my first ever team I coached. And we got pretty good and had a lot of great experiences, had a lot of fun, great people I worked with, great girls.
What age range?
So at the time they were U13, and I coached them until they were like U16. And again, I'm only 19, right? And so, young coach with a young team, and these girls did. Some of them went and played for Cal State Bakersfield when they started the women's program. That was the first team, and then I went on to the Bakersfield Gunners, a team that Coach Tobin started and coached in that, and I coached a lot of a U19 boys team that Joe and I coached called the Bakersfield Santos, and these are a bunch of just young men that didn't have a lot of money, so I could relate with them really well, and we worked hard, and we became pretty damn good. And one kid named Fabian Sandoval was a striker. When I got a hold of him, I turned him into a center back / sweeper. And he went on and played for Cal State Bakersfield and played a little bit of pro. And now he's a developmental academy coach for the LAFC. He works with their academy teams, So
that's awesome.
And he's an assistant coach for Cal State LA. So yeah, I mean, to see those kids be successful from that. So I knew from a young age, but I started off the get-go, and I'm not a conventional coach. I think outside the box. I create my own activities. I spin off of activities. But I think the biggest thing for me more than anything, and I think from the Kern County Warriors to the Bakersfield Santos to the Gunners to the teams that I coached in New Mexico, which is probably one of the most talented group of young men I coached, was a 1992 birth year, Rio Vista Football Club. They were regional finalists, Region 4 finalists. If we would have won the game, we'd have went to the Lamar Hunt Open Championship for the national championship. We were ranked number 5 in the country. I had 21 young men on that team. I coached them when they were U12 all the way through they were U19. We became really, really tight. 19 of my 21 players, I moved on to college. And many of them went on to be captains of their team. Division 3, Division 2, and Division 1. Some of them won national championships with Fort Lewis College, multiple national championships. I sent 4 guys there, and all of them won championships. Some won 3 national championships with Fort Lewis College. I sent some kids to University of New Mexico. I sent kids to Trinity University, Division 3, powerhouse, in San Antonio. And he was my captain, Darren McAfee. Great kid, great player. He ended up captaining that team for a couple years. So I think one of the things that I pride myself on is I help kids move on, but I don't help them just go be on a team. I always tell them, you're going to go be the difference maker on that team. You're going to go change the team. And those kids bought into it. And the kids that buy into it, they actually go change the team. And again, it's accountability, it's expectations, it's holding high standards with the kids that you work with. And you love them and you believe them. It's tough love. It's a lot being from a father-son, father-daughter to a coach is very similar if you do it the right way. You love them, but you hold them accountable.
Clearly what you're doing works. Obviously, just based on what the story you just told us and how many people you've been able to get to go to play on the collegiate level and then all the success they've had. But were you always just successful? Like you said, you started teaching that women's team. Were you always just a great coach right off the bat? Did you struggle?
No,
what was the learning curve for you?
I'm still not a great coach. I'm still learning every day. If as soon as I call myself a great coach, or I tell myself, or if I think I'm a great coach, then I should retire, because that means I'm not learning. That means I'm not becoming better. It means I'm not adapting. It means that I don't care, that I already know it all. And I learn from everybody. I learn from my directors now, Hector and Felipe and Coach Munoz. I learn from you guys. I learn from my high school players. You have to have a growth, open mindset if you want to continue to be good. I'm not great, and I'll never be great, because there's always room to get much better, right? And no, I don't always have success, but I don't always think that winning games means you're having success. You have to know the environment that you're in. And so, for example, if I'm at a 4-year university and I'm at a Division I program, I better win. I better count on these 18, 19, and 20-year-olds to win me games, or I'm going to lose my job.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the truth.
Yeah.
However, if I'm at a Mendocino Junior College, I can go 0-20 every year and probably not lose my job. And I won't go 0-20 every year, but I don't win every season, But does that define me as a good coach or that I'm doing a good job? No. Because what's my job there? It's to help matriculate student athletes to the next level. It's help them to become more mature. Could I win more by recruiting kids from out of the country or out of the area and have more refined players or polished players, if you will? Yeah, I could. But the whole point of me starting the men's program was for kids like him, right? Is to help him become better. And so maybe we don't win as much as we should or like to, but I'm helping kids become the best that they can be. Whereas if I had just the win at all cost mentality, I probably wouldn't last that long at Mendocino College in that type of position, because that's not what it's for. Right. Now, don't get me wrong, winning's great. And you want to teach that winning mindset. It's healthy because people want to be around winners. But the reality in this environment here, I'll use my first year with the men's program. We went 16-2-3 and won conference and went to the playoffs and had a great season. The next year, we didn't have as good of a season. We took second in conference and went to playoffs. But again, it's that small mentality of where we're at and what we're doing that we struggled with as a program. Most of my guys came in unfit, didn't come to the summer training programs, didn't go to the spring. They lived off their laurels off of season one, and no matter what us as coaches tried to tell them, like, hey, as soon as we lost in our playoff game, we gave them 2 weeks off and we were in the weight room in December. But not everybody bought into that. And again, it's teaching them that's, if you want to go to that next level, that's what you got to do. But that second year we still had success, but we graduated 16 kids, 16 sophomores. Now, if you're in Santa Rosa or you're in, a bigger city where there's lots of people to choose from, that's not that big of a deal. Here in Ukiah, that's a massive deal because we had 35 guys, 31 of them were local kids. We graduated 16 of them. So, and of those 16, most of them, if not all of them, were starters at some point. So that was a big drop off. So we lost them, and then we had to kind of build back up again. And we took our lumps the first 2 to 3 years, where it was like slowly getting the squad back and building it back up with local players.
And is this before you showed up, or this during this time?
I showed up the second year. So the year we got second place and went to playoffs, that was my first year.
Yeah. And we still had a solid team.
We did have a really solid team. But everybody that played the first year could have played the second year. There's a lot of people that didn't want to come back.
They just didn't want to come back.
Yeah, they didn't want to come back. Yeah. And you're right. Like, obviously I wasn't there to see the first year, but you would hear from the coaching staff and from other players. Like Fabian, Felipe were always on it. But then they would say, like, dude, last year you didn't even know, like, this player was way faster. This player came in way more fit. Like, they came in out of shape this season, and you could just tell. You know what I'm saying? Like, the ones that don't put in the work, they kind of fall back. They fall out of the starting lineup. But
we had all conference players the first year that didn't even start the second year because they were too unfit. And again, they don't know. They went to a small little high school where they could do what they want, when they want, and how they wanted. They went to play men's. It's the culture too. A lot of Hispanics that hang out with their uncles and cousins. And
right. That's what I was going to say.
Drink every weekend. And
kids do they see the future that they could potentially have, or are they just happy playing? Is that what it was?
I think it was more than they were happy playing in a more structured environment. You know what I mean? I think they enjoyed that. And that some of them in the beginning thought or did want to move on, but then clearly they didn't when they came back in the second season, 25 pounds overweight.
Yeah, that's another thing too. Like, I can only speak as a player, but it's just frustrating when you're there and you're one of the kids that does want to move on and you're giving it your 100%, and then these kids that come in hungover to practice, or they don't give maximum effort. And that's what I couldn't really speak on it because I'm not the coach, but I feel like that's one of the challenges of being a junior college coach is that there's inconsistencies in what's the word I'm looking for? Like the goals of each player. Like some kids want to move on, other kids are just there to have fun.
Right, and it's a team sport, so you need everybody on the same page.
Like one player, that's all I do is just play. Others, they have a family and kids, and this is just a hobby to them. So it's very difficult, But I will say, Your program is very structured, and it's very easy to transition from your Mendocino College program to a Division II program. And the main difference, obviously, other than coaching styles, is the players that you're surrounded by.
That's it.
You know, because all of my players, all of my teammates at San Bernardino would push me to be better. Mm-hmm. Here at Mendocino College, it was a handful of players.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Interesting.
Going back to what I just said, like some people want to move on, others didn't. The ones that did, we would go running together. We'd go lift together. We would go play soccer together. Like there's just a huge
culture.
difference. Yes. And a lot of times, like, you know, like that a workout, a day's workout can be just changed in the morning. Like, I don't really feel like working out today.
Yeah.
But if I'm there, I'd be like, dude, come on, just go on a run. We'll get something in. It's better than nothing. It's like, yeah, you're right. Let's just go. And that was all the time at San Bernardino.
Mm-hmm.
All the time, because all those players want to be better.
Yeah.
And that's players that I'm competing, like Blake, like one of my best friends. I'm competing with him from that position. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like at Mendocino College, there wasn't hardly any of that.
Yeah.
There was a lot of great players, a lot of better players than me, a lot of players that worked harder than me. But
I wouldn't
it's
say
just
worked
difficult.
harder. No, I wouldn't say that because you gave everything you got. You got better, big time. That's the biggest deal. That's the biggest difference is the fact that it's a different mindset of a different level of players. And, I'll use poor Hector, one of the best players that I coached at Mendocino College for the men's program. And no matter what we would tell these young men, we never had a full team train until the day before our very first scrimmage of the year against William Jessup. So we trained all summer long, and literally we had probably 7 to 8 consistent players come. And then the other 7 to 8 players, 10 would come in and out. And they wouldn't tell you when, they wouldn't tell you why. And as a coach,
how frustrating is that as a coach?
You're hitting your head against the wall.
What can you do? You
can't do much, man.
You can't do much. There's nothing. I mean, they're not on scholarship. You can't hold them accountable. You don't have like Santa Rosa, who would probably get 40 to 60 guys, and it's like, okay, you don't want to come. That's what you're proving, and put a cross through that name. We need these players more than these bigger JCs. It's more of a challenge in our area. You have to coach a lot more too, besides the motivation part and trying to get them, but then teach them how to play. They don't know how to play.
Yeah, that was another thing too. Like, and the difference is our training sessions would be different. Like at that level, you're expected to come in and know what to do. And then with Shane's, it's like he's teaching us tactical formations and the basics that we should be learning at clubs. But a lot of us didn't play club, so we don't know those things. Same with Udi. In his interview, he was talking about how when he went to San Jose, he's learning things that these kids are learning at 12, 13 years old. He never played a club.
Right, and that's the drawback of living
in a small town. Yeah,
and
then it's a drawback of also being a coach for a junior college, because it's like I have to take weeks to teach these guys the formation, to teach these guys the mechanics and how to kick a ball sometimes. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like that's all he's got. He's got to work with what he's got. And then you have programs like San Jose Junior College that they have players from San Jose United, they have players from the Bay Area, they have players from Atletico coming in,
have experience,
ballers, where a lot of times at D2, D1 programs, they focus heavy on recruiting. It's like if I recruit the players that fit my system the best, the less I have to do. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like at San Jose Junior College, like he says, they have that luxury because they have such a talented pool in the area that they can pick and choose from. But here it's different.
Yeah, which is great too. At the same token, I mean, it's still providing opportunities for young people to have that opportunity to be seen, to be heard, to learn and grow if they so choose to. But like that example with Hector, you encourage those 8 guys. It's like, hey, there's controllables in life, guys. You can control yourself and the attitude, the work ethic, the commitment, the dedication that you bring. You can't control the other guys. You just can't. You can encourage them. And that's what we all did. Mm-hmm. And we would set them down like, hey, if you guys come up consistently, the talent's here, but we can't expect just to show up 2 days before a game and have success. It's just, that's unrealistic. So understand that if you have this mindset, we will not have the success that we hope to have or that we could have if you showed up on a daily basis. Because the team's good enough, but you got to be organized. You gotta be on the same page, and unfortunately, you showing up the day before you go play a scrimmage, and have the opportunity to play in front of a 4-year university against a 4-year university program, and you supposedly want to go on, but you're not showing up consistently, well, you're gonna get waxed. And they did, and deservedly so, because they didn't put in the effort to get anything better than that, except for those 8 guys. And and it takes 11 on the field and some to make it happen. And so from a coaching standpoint, you do hit your head against the wall, and you do sometimes ask why. Well, did I make the right choice to come to Mendocino College and coach and do this, or should I have? I'd be at a Division I program right now coaching if I chose that path.
Right, and that's I was going to ask you why. Is it just to come back to the community where you grew up in and give back, or what was the reason behind that?
I made a decision at University of New Mexico after my first year as the top assistant coach.
How did you get there?
So I got there. I coached club in Bakersfield, and then I was an assistant coach with Cal State Bakersfield men's, and I worked with the women some. And then Jeremy Gunn got the head coaching job in '99 at Fort Lewis College, and then I was at Cal State Bakersfield. And after that season, Gunn called me and asked if I'd want to be his assistant at Fort Lewis College. So I went and I did that in Durango, because that was the path. And then I finished up my degree while I was in Durango. I got a minor. I could have graduated earlier, but I wanted a minor in biology, so I got a minor in biology.
Is that part of the coaching gig? Like, if you come here, you get to study for free if you're the assistant coach?
No. I had to pay for it, but it was really cheap to pay for the class. So I took a class for biology, got my minor in biology. I got a degree in physical education, minor in biology from Bakersfield, and but I wanted to coach, so I didn't do the teaching route. And so I coached there for 1 year. They didn't have a graduate school program. And back then, you had to get a graduate degree if you wanted to coach, like at a Division II program, Division III program, and even at the time, probably a Division I program. They didn't have one. And they didn't have online programs back in 2000 for master degrees programs. So I was coaching a club team out of Durango with a bunch of Fort Lewis red shirts and kids around the Durango and Farmington, New Mexico area. And I took them to a tournament in Phoenix on President's Day weekend. And so I was there coaching and recruiting for Fort Lewis College. The current head coach was Klaus Weber at University of New Mexico. And he came up to me, and we had played a team from Cal South, and we beat them. And they were the top team. And they were supposed to walk away with the tournament, and we beat them in final group play. We ended up winning the tournament. And he came up to me and says, "Wow, your kids play motivated. Your kids play with so much excitement and energy, and they go after it." And the team from LA was just technically brilliant, but we were super organized. And just like at Mendocino College, we didn't have the most talented group of players, but we were organized. That's what kept us in games, right? We were organized, and we would try to find a goal here and there. Same with these guys. Well, he talked to me and told me about Jeremy Fishbein, he coached there for 16 years, and I went there the same year he did as his first year, that he was coming in as the new associate head coach with Klaus, because Klaus was going to slowly retire. And so I went because they had a graduate school program. So they introduced me to the people for graduate school, and I got into the program. And so I went to graduate school as I was the top assistant. And during that whole year, it was a big struggle year and a ton of recruiting, man. I was on the road all the time. And when I was at home, even if I wasn't on the road, recruits were coming in that we were recruiting. So even if I was home, we had recruits come in on a Friday, they'd fly out on a Sunday. I just felt it was literally 24/7. And I started thinking to myself, it's like, man, if I have a wife and kids, which I didn't at the time, I'm never going to spend time with them. I'm always going to be gone. Even when I'm home, I'm gone, because you're picking up the kids here, you're taking them on a trip there. I mean, you're showing off, you're not just the college, but you're showing off New Mexico. You're showing off the Sandia Mountains, and you're just going on hikes. But you're never with your family. And I'm thinking, man, do I want that? Do I want to be a head coach at that level that bad, where I miss out on my children? And I decided I didn't. So as I was graduating with my master's, they asked if I wanted to continue on with my doctorate. And so I said, yeah. And I stepped away from the men's program and I just coached club, and that 92 boys team, I was coaching, and I just focused on my education, and I was a teacher's assistant throughout University of New Mexico, so I taught classes. That's what paid for my education. It was all free the entire time. My entire graduate level work was free. And so at that moment, that's when I decided I didn't want to go that route. The commitment level is so great. And I just talked to Jeremy Fishbein last week, and we had a long conversation. He's no longer at University of New Mexico coaching. And he's kind of goes stir crazy a little bit, because he's like, I think you made a good choice. His daughter's now a runner at Colorado State, which is like the number 1, 2, or 3 running program, Division I in the country. And his other daughter's going to graduate this year and go play at Fort Lewis College, where he once coached at before, at one time, Jeremy Fishbein did for like 6 years. And so anyhow, he was just saying, I think you made the right call, buddy, because it's like you're getting time with your family that I didn't get, that I missed out a lot of time with my kids and my wife. And I think you made the right call. And I sometimes wonder where I'd be, but at the same time, I'm happy where I'm at. And it was the right call, because I don't think I'd be happy if I was missing out on my children's lives, because I love being around them. I love listening to them, and I even love listening to them argue with each other at times, right? Those are things that you would miss, and that's why I didn't go that route. I didn't even know if I'd go college, to be honest with you. I took a job at Cibola High School in New Mexico during my doctorate program at the end of it. And so they needed a high school coach, and somebody had mentioned my name to Cibola High School, and so they reached out and asked if I'd apply. So I did. And so I got a head coaching job for the varsity program, and when they asked what they told me, and this athletic director, one of the neatest, Phil Schreier, one of the neatest men I've ever met, a great mentor of mine during my 4 years of coaching and teaching at Cibola High School. Incredible man. Just said, listen, I'm hiring you to make a change. We need something different here. This program last year almost got suspended from New Mexico athletics. The New Mexico Activity Association was going to suspend them. They had 55 yellow and red cards in one season. Parents getting thrown out of games, kids getting thrown out of games. He goes, they want to suspend this program, and they haven't been to the playoffs and won a playoff game since 1985. I want to mention that too. So.
And what year is this?
This is in 2007.
Turn your timer off before you continue. I don't want it going off.
Actually, I don't think I restarted it, to be honest. No, I didn't even restart it.
Oh my God. Okay, that's good. Sorry.
Because I was like, I don't want it to happen again.
So this is in 90 what?
2007.
Gotcha.
In 2008 is when I started there. And so I got a teaching job, and I was teaching emotionally disturbed kids in a self-contained classroom. And Izzy, and you've probably heard about me, Gabe, run a pretty tight ship, pretty disciplined, and you're dealing with kids that are extremely emotionally erratic. And you talk about being dealt a tough hand. These kids have.
I teach that class now, so I understand exactly what you're talking about.
There you go. So a lot of kids on drugs, a lot of gangbangers, drug slinging.
Not necessarily like
the kids not necessarily like, oh, okay,
kids
so
like
you're doing
7 years, 8 years old.
Yeah, so I'm dealing with the younger.
No, these are 9th through 12th graders in a self-contained
you got
classroom.
the older ones, okay, gotcha.
And so some really classic stories there on that side of it as well. But so I'm teaching this, which I never ever thought I'd be a teacher in high school, mind you, working in a self-contained classroom with emotionally disturbed kids.
What kind of stuff would you teach them? Are you just like a teacher that's teaching them every subject? Or?
Yes, because they're not allowed to go outside the classroom. They're a danger to society.
That's exactly how they paint them too. That's exactly how they paint
and so, and I didn't have my teaching credential. So then I went to night school. And as I'm doing my doctorate, I'm going to night school to get my teaching credential for a year and a half. And I got my teaching credential in special education, working with these kids. And so I did that. And I took a program that hadn't won a playoff game in I think it was 1985, they made it to the semifinals, or 84, they made it to the semifinals of the state championship. In New Mexico, they do things right. They really do a good job with their student athletes and their sports. They really, ton of ink, front page, pictures. They built a 4-field soccer complex for the high school programs. I was advocating to get a soccer-specific field on Cibola High School, and I ended up getting it, but after I left. But I left a legacy, so they got it, you know. I'm proud of that because I really worked hard to change that program around to show the need, and we did it, and now they have a soccer field on campus. They don't have to go to that 4-field, and it's a turf field with lights.
Dude, that's awesome.
So, yeah, again, it's about being... You want to be a change agent where you go, you know, and you gotta go ruffle feathers in a good, positive way when you ruffle feathers. But you gotta be willing to get out there and get after it. And that's what I did with these kids. I took a bunch of kids that, for example, a kid named Mauricio Busiaga, one of the neatest kids, best kids I've coached. Freshman year, he failed, had no grades. So I told him he better go to summer school, and this is what he's got to maintain. And he's going to come to my class at lunch, sit with my kids in the special ed, and you're going to do your homework in my class. He did. Kid graduated with over 3.0, and I got him an athletic scholarship to go to school at Lyons College, where he ended up being a 2-year captain and graduated. That's changing a kid's life.
Heck
That's what it's about.
Changing his future.
Great kid. And he just needed somebody to just say, what you're doing is not good enough. You're better than that, and we're going to make you better than that. And he believed in me, and I believed in him, right? And I was hard on him. And, you know, I mean, again, Izzy knows. I mean, all the kids that played for me, I run a tight ship, but I love them to death, and I know what they're capable of. And I know that there's so much more in these kids than what people tell them and what they believe in them because of what people tell them and coddle them and cradle them. It's like, no, we're better than this. Let's stand up and make it happen. So we went on and won our first playoff game that year in my first year. And my next 2 years, we went to the quarterfinals and the semifinals of state. And my final year, we lost in the quarterfinals, my fourth and final season. But we were playoff contenders and winners and competing for championships for the state level every year and doing things that we weren't supposed to be doing. And as I was teaching, I kind of took over the special ed program for ED and kind of ran it. I had another teacher, but I'd end up having to run all the IEPs and that was really interesting. As Gabe's probably aware, you know, there's a lot of advocacy groups, which I think are great again, but I think a lot of times we just give so many excuses to these kids and they're more capable. Almost
enabling them.
It's exactly what it is. They know the laws and what their IEP says better than you and I do. Especially the high school kids and what they can get away with, and they take it beyond the limit. I feel I'm a big believer. If you have good structure, you have good discipline, and you're fair and true and honest with them, they'll respect you and buy into it more and have more success, because ultimately that IEP is going to run out by the time they get it, 20 or 21 or whatever it is, it's done. And then they're in the real world. And did we provide the necessary tools? So when you ask, did I educate them? I don't necessarily think I educated them as being mathematicians or English teachers, but I did know that if they had a 3rd grade reading level or lower, they had about a 90% chance of being in and out of the prison system. So I knew really quickly that reading and writing was important. So we worked a lot on that and held them accountable, which again, they didn't like, but liked. And I think I did a good job in that program. You know, I sent kids to the military. Kid go to the Marines. That's unheard of in a special ed ED program. That's not really supposed to happen. But again, when you have expectations and you have standards and you believe in those kids and you build a rapport with those kids, you take the time to listen to those kids, but yet they know where you stand and they know what's expected of them, they'll excel. And it's the same with student athletes. It's the same with anybody in life. Same with my own kids, right? You set goals. Don't tell me about them. Show me how you're going to get there. Show me your path. Mm-hmm. It's up to you to make the difference. I want to hear it. Show it. And again, so I think that's kind of my motto. That's what I do. That's what I love to do. And I did that for 4 years, and then the job here came open. And I wasn't even going to apply for Mendocino College. Wasn't even something I was even thinking about doing. I met my wife at University of New Mexico. She's from New Mexico. We had 2 kids at the time. My in-laws are there, and I love my in-laws a lot. They're, a second set of parents. I really became attached. I was a director of coaching for a club for a while. I just picked up a different team, my 92 boys. We had just lost in the quarterfinals of the Region 4 championships in our final season together. And they all moved on, and I picked up a 95 boys. And I had 2 teams going on, and they were going to be good. And then this job came open, and somebody called me from Mendocino College and asked if I'd apply. So I did. And I told my wife, I said, I probably won't even get it, because I applied for Cal State Stanislaus women's job in 2004. Was a finalist for that job, for the head women's job, Division II program. Didn't get it. I applied for the full-time position, Feather River, men's and women's job. And I left that interview, and somebody in the committee, I don't think they were supposed to do it, but I was walking in my car, my dad, my mom drove over, my wife and I flew in. We had a newborn baby that was 6 months old, or 8 months old, little Addie. So they got to meet her for the first time. And so they drove over to Quincy and met us over there. We'd flown into Nevada. And I left that interview feeling really good about it. And I was walking in my car, my dad, my wife, my mom were sitting there waiting for me outside the car. And my dad, hey, how'd it go? And you've met my dad. He's happy-go-lucky guy, likes to joke around, just great outlook on life, great role model, great mentor of mine. Anyhow, I thought, oh man, Dad, I thought it went well. I enjoyed it. It was great. And this lady came walking around the corner, and she goes, I just want to tell you, you are a breath of fresh air. I mean, we've done so many interviews for this job, and you brought energy. You brought excitement, man. I just really enjoyed you so much. I'm thinking, whoa. My dad kind of looks at me, and my wife gets big-eyed. I'm thinking, dude, that's a good sign. That's a committee member.
That's a great sign. Yeah.
And then behind me, the athletic director, Merle Trueblood, I'll never forget his name, has his golf cart and flies down the parking lot, stops on his brakes, and the lady goes, I was just telling this young man just how much we enjoyed him as a committee. He was a breath of fresh air. He was a shining light, and it was just going off. I'm thinking, dude, she's saying that in front of the athletic director. I'm like, this is going to happen maybe. And Merle Trueblood looked me in the eye, shook my hand, and he said, I look forward to working with you. You'll hear from me by this weekend. Direct quote.
It's gotta feel good.
Felt great. I'm thinking, I got a job, full-time job, dude. I'm
in front of your family.
In front of my family.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, I told him, I said, I mean, I don't have a lot of money, Mom and Dad, but I'm going to buy dinner tonight. So we went out to dinner in Little Quincy, thinking, dude, this is where we're going to live. This is crazy. This is going to be a good stepping stone. Maybe this is where we stay. I don't know. I don't know if you've ever been to Quincy, but you're in the middle of nowhere. Oh, you're in the middle. It's like 6 hours, 5.5 hours up in this year. You're in the middle of nowhere. But like free dorms. I mean, you talk about, it's like a Division II program, because you have things that you can put to kids. They can recruit Nevada kids and give them in-state tuition and kind of like scholarship opportunities. And their programs primarily of international kids. That's what they have on their program. So I go home, fly back home thinking, dude, this is exciting. So that was like on a Friday, weekend goes by, and I don't hear anything. It's like, oh, well, maybe something came up. So I wait for the following weekend. I don't hear anything. It's like, Mr. Trueblood told me he was going to call me. I'm thinking to myself. So I call that Monday, 2 weekends after, and they wouldn't answer. Finally, I get a hold of the administrative assistant of Mr. Trueblood, who's not very true. I go, hey, this is Shane Huff. I interviewed a couple weeks ago and haven't heard from Mr. Trueblood. He said he was going to contact me 2 weekends ago. She goes, oh. As soon as she said that, I knew I didn't get the job.
Oh, your heart just sinks.
It did. I was gutted. Damn. Because that's the athletic director shaking your hand and saying,
like a done deal.
I'm looking forward to working with you. And then the other committee members were just like,
telling you how awesome you are.
Yeah. I'm like, dude, this is it. It didn't happen. And
so how'd she tell you?
Yeah, what did they say?
So she just said, oh man, I'm so sorry, but they gave the job to somebody else. And I go, okay, that's all right. I said, do you think Mr. Trueblood can call me? And I kind of like to know, how I can improve it within an interview, if you don't mind. Sure, I'll let him know. To this day, Merle Trueblood has never called me.
You're still waiting on the call.
Yeah. Hey, Merle Trueblood, if you watch this, make sure you call Shane up. Do you know who got the job?
Yeah, the guy, Williams, Don Williams. He's not there anymore. He had a fallout with Mr. Trueblood.
I wonder why.
Go for it. A question I have before we move on to the next thing is, during those interviews, what does the interview consist of? Like, what kind of questions are they asking you?
Great question. Yeah.
That is a great question.
Those interviews vary. They really do. This particular interview, I show up and I go into a room and I'm around a bunch of people and they just ask me some questions, fill out some paperwork. And sometimes, and I think in this particular, I had to take like a little pre-test type thing with questions that they asked. I did that. Then I had to do this practice session at Feather River. And so I'm thinking I'm going to have like a field. I was supposed to do a passing exercise, super basic. Literally, Feather River is like on a mountain. And every once in a while, there's this little piece that's flat and then a mountain. I'm literally teaching this like on a 6x6 little flat square, not on a soccer field, but like some spot on campus. And I'm taking them through it. I don't have players. They are the committee members that are taking part in the passing exercises.
That's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah. So they can't play. They don't know what they're doing and they can't pass. So I just make it fun, man. You just have fun and just, Izzy seen me in the academy. He knows, man, I can coach 3 to 5 year olds. I can coach 25-year-olds. It don't matter. You just change your mindset and the attitude and what you bring, right?
Yeah, I feel like it'd be totally different teaching these old.
Yeah, so I'm training them like I am my U8 academy players at MCSA, just keeping it fun, keeping it light, and we're having some good laughs and a good time. And then after that, we went into a classroom, and I'm sitting with a little bottle of water and they just fire away the questions off the little thing that I filled out, the pre-questions, and they follow up with stuff. And that went great. And Izzy knows me. I don't like ties and suits. That's not who I am. This is who I am, right? Collared shirt, but I'm a shorts guy. And so being in a suit and tie is a lot for me. So I'm dressed up as well. And that was the interview. And then you leave.
And those questions on that paper, are they saying like, what would you do? Like what kind of specific questions are there?
They'll ask you about protocol. If a player does this, who would you report this to? Eligibility questions, matriculation questions, like how do you move a kid on? I've had interviews where they'll have you write a recruiting letter. And so you write a letter to a prospective student athlete, stuff like that. Those are the type of things that they have you answer. And I've interviewed at Mount San Antonio College for the head women's job, which is a big time JC.
Mount Sac.
Yeah,
so good.
I interviewed for them. I've interviewed for Cal State Stanislaus. I've interviewed twice for Santa Rosa JC. Women's program. I've interviewed for Las Positas College and was a finalist for that one, which I thought I was going to get. I think, and I didn't get any of them except I got Mendocino College, and that could be just could have been just because I was the only guy that applied. You know, I don't think they get a lot of applicants from up here. So I took this job, and the interviews, nothing like at the others. You just literally I met with the AD, met with a little bit of a committee. I talked to them. They asked me some questions, and then I flew home. Like I came home, I don't know, maybe on a Thursday, had the interview on a Friday morning. I flew home Friday night back to New Mexico. He called me, my brother took me to the airport, and he called me the same day as my interview and said, you know, we'd like to offer you the job. And this was mid-January, so I just started my second semester at Cibo High School. And I had just started training those young men, the new club boys that I had taken over, or formed from tryouts of 2 teams for like a month. So I came home, told my wife, and what do you want to do? It's a part-time job at Mendocino College. And I mentioned that to the AD, and the AD had specifically said, he goes, you know, hey, if you work hard, you know, you're a local kid, you work hard, you know, I could see them opening this up for a full-time job. You know, and I was like, told my wife, well, do we want to take the chance? You know? And so we thought about it for a couple of days and talked a lot about it, and I took the job. And I flew back within a week of taking the job. And with this interview, what I did too, and I do with most of my interviews, is I have a booklet that I put together. And it has like kind of a portfolio of myself, of my accomplishments, my recruiting letters that I've written at UNM, at Fort Lewis College, at Cal State Bakersfield. It has kids that I've moved on, letters of rec. And then I put together a really detailed 18-week to-do list. I called it a plan of action. That was the first thing they looked at. So it had a table of contents, and they'd go through it. Oh, okay, I want to go look at this. I want to. But the very beginning on that was, this is my plan of action. This
like
is
coaching plan of action, or for players?
Coaching and changing the program.
Gotcha.
Because this program, you know, I do my homework. Didn't win. I think they maybe had one winning season, or at least they were 500 one time.
This is for the women's program.
And they didn't have much success. And so I had a plan of action of what I was going to do to change the program. And in those things was fundraising. That's questions they ask. How do you fundraise? And how I was going to fundraise, what type of fundraising I'd done in the past for other programs, and what my plan was, and how I was going to recruit players, what I was going to do to recruit players, how was I going to show them how I was going to promote the college, and be a big team member for the college, how I was going to start 7-a-side leagues, and how I wanted to eventually start a club. All of that was in my plan of action. And I think a lot of times they don't think those things come to fruition with coaches. It's kind of fluff.
Right.
And it's not, when you get that from me, that's what I'm going to do. And so I came back, and I came here within a week. I got my letter of resignation to the Albuquerque Public Schools, did my 2 weeks, and then I drove out here, and I got to work. And I just literally, nobody knew about Mendocino College. My first year, I didn't have one email or one call from a student athlete saying they wanted to come play soccer for the women's program at Mendocino College. When I showed up for my first practice in late February with the women's program, there was like 7 young ladies, and they could barely pass the ball 5 yards. And I scratched my head thinking, oh my gosh.
What did I get myself into?
That's exactly what I told my brother-in-law. What did I get myself into, you know? And I was thinking, you know what? I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to change it. I'm going to build something here that nobody thinks you can do the right way. And I remember the athletic director at the time, his name was Tom Gang. And I remember the first time I sat with him, which made me really think about what am I doing here? He says to me, he says, I got a piece of advice for you. He was the AD football coach. This dude's massive. He's like 6'7", 350-pound dude. He's a massive individual. Jeez. Don't care about anybody but yourself. Don't give a crap about any of these other programs, because they don't care about you. Care about yourself and your program, and then maybe you'll have success. I'm thinking to myself, what? am I getting myself into? It's like, pinch yourself. This is like the Twilight Zone. It's like, what do you mean I don't want to care about the other programs? Like, if the basketball program does good, the baseball, that brings recognition to our school. I'm thinking this in my head. I'm like, dude, this can't be real. But he was legit, because he said, that's what I told him when I took this job. It's like, I don't care about anybody else but my football program, and that's what I care about. I'm like, oh my God. But I took it, and I'm there, and I just did my thing. I lived in that office 24. It was a part-time job, but I was there at 8 a.m. and I didn't go home till 8 p.m. And I worked. I contacted and drove to all the schools in Mendocino County. I drove to the smaller schools in Sonoma County. I drove to all the schools in Humboldt County, because nobody knew. I called the athletic director at Windsor within the first 6 months of me taking the program. And I said, hey, I'm just wanting to get a hold and see if I can get a hold of your coach. Love to talk to the young ladies about Mendocino College. She's like, Mendocino College? Where's that at? I was like, in Ukiah. There's no college in Ukiah. What do you mean there's a Mendocino College in Ukiah? I go, yeah, it's been there for quite a while. She goes, I've never even heard of it. I'm like, okay, we haven't done our job here as coaches or as an athletic department to share the word that Mendocino College is real. And so I think what I ended up becoming for the Mendocino College is I was their greatest promoter, ambassador for the school locally, because I literally drove to every high school. And not did I just drive and say hi to the student athletes. When I set it up, I said, you can bring anybody you want. Anybody that wants to learn about the JC system, and anybody that wants to learn about big JCs versus small JCs and how it works and how you can use this as a stepping stone to the next level, bring them. So I'd have students that weren't athletes that would just come to my meetings and listen. So not only did I promote and recruit for the college full-time athletes, but I brought in tons of non-athletes that became full-time. And a lot of times they would come with one of their athletic friends as well and just become full-time students. And I got the ball rolling. And our first year, I think won 4 games. We lost 11. We were competitive. We tied Solano College 1-1, and that was the first time Solano had dropped points in league in 6 years and given up a goal in 6 years. So I kind of opened up the conference eyes after the first years. But I remember telling Joe, who was my assistant coach, and Coach Rhodes, we got work to do. And I said, as soon as our last game's over, we've got to get the girls in the weight room within a week, and then I'm going to be on the road. I'm going to be recruiting. And that's what we did.
How do you convince prospects to go to a program that has a losing record?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Not only that, Gabe, but how do you convince 4-year qualifying young ladies, to come to a JC? Because most of my players that I recruited for Mendocino College women's were 4-year qualifiers that already had been accepted and planned to go to a 4-year school. The girls have their stuff together. The boys, they had to come to Mendocino. The girls didn't. What I tell people is, if you believe in the product that you put on the field, you believe in what you're offering these kids, and you truly believe in that, people will follow. And that's what I did. I would sit down with them and their families and tell them how Mendocino College and how Coach Huff, Coach Rhodes, Coach Munoz can change their daughter's life and make it bigger and better and provide more opportunities than what they've gotten out of high school. Most of my girls were decent players, but didn't ever get recruited. And I told them I would help them get recruited. I would make sure of it, because that's my job. And I would assure them that they would be taken well care of while they're here with Coach Huff. Because again, with girls too, especially if they came from out of the area, their moms and dads wanted to make sure they're safe. So I took ownership of that. And I genuinely, and I don't think the college really recognizes the amount of energy and effort that gets put in or was put in to this program. And probably for many of the coaches, but I can only speak for myself, the care, thought, and pride that we put in to really developing young people into good people, great people, and promoting that college that was never promoted before, and helping young kids be successful. And Mendocino College getting a lot of credit for that. I'm proud of that. But I tell people all the time, if you have a passion, you have a belief, and you understand that what you're doing means something, you can convince anybody to follow. And that's what I did. I believe in the things that I do. I believe that I can make people better people. I believe I can make people better soccer players. And I truly believe that I can make a big difference in people's lives.
Yeah, props to you. That's awesome.
And that's how I get them to come. And they did. And we brought in some great players. After my first year of full recruiting, because I came in late into the recruiting process for my first season of 2011, getting a full year of recruiting, and we won our league for my second year. We won conference.
Hell yeah.
We went to playoffs.
Damn.
Within the third and fourth year, we were the top 20 women's college soccer program in the country.
I bet you the other teams were shocked. Like, who's Mendocino? What is going on
Everybody
here?
was. They're like, how did you do it? What did you do?
Yeah.
And how do you know? And I tell them, I said, I believe in what I do. I care and I believe.
How does your coaching style change from that team you had over in New Mexico and a collegiate JC women's program? Is it the same throughout?
My expectations don't change.
Okay.
The delivery changes at times, but don't get me wrong. Listen, I had some great players. There's some players from the coast that were phenomenal. Anna Waldman, Ronnie Richter.
I don't know Ronnie.
Two phenomenal players from Mendocino area. And Anna had a bit of tude, right?
She's good. She's aggressive.
She's good. Yeah, I agree. And she's aggressive. And she's an animal. And scored 62 goals in her 2 years here, 30 and 32 or 28 and 34 or something. Ronnie Richter had 24 assists her sophomore year. Again, I don't think Anna would have done those things unless she had a coach that pushed her like I did. And I think she would tell you that. She's a young lady that's extremely confident. Sometimes, we butted heads. But like I always told her, hey, I love you to death, kiddo, but this is the way it's going to be. And I always had an open door policy with my kids, just like with the men's program. You handle it the same way. You have high expectations, high standards. You talk to them, probably had a lot more one-on-one conversations, with the girls, with Joe and Naomi there, to give them a little bit more love and feedback in that regard than maybe considering the guys at times, because the guys don't really want a ton of one-on-one all the time as much as the girls. The girls would come to the offices more than the guys would at times. But, I don't think there's a whole lot different. It's just expectations and standards, man. That's what it is. And I took players like Anna, she was an All-American at NNA high school and got a degree, right? I mean, she wouldn't have done that. She got invited to go play for the Taiwan women's national team. That wouldn't have happened unless we had high standards and held her accountable, and we did. Another big-time player for me for the women's was, she's just Taylor McMillan, just one of my all-time greats. Played from Eureka High School, went up there and watched her play high school and spoke to her and her family, spoke to the Eureka High School team, and then I got to know her club coach and then the club team. I'd go up there and run sessions, and I took a lot of trips, spent a lot of my own money traveling up to all these places, and got her to come and convinced her to come. And what a ball player she was. She transferred from here and went to Humboldt State, played 2 years, and was the most valuable player at Humboldt State her junior year. And now she's an assistant women's coach at Humboldt State.
Dang.
She's a leader, right?
For her.
Yeah. And just finished her master's degree. So, again, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference in regards to that. It's all about expectations and standards, holding kids accountable. And when my kids come into training, and this is what our theme is, and this is what our focus in, it's got to be done at a high level, not at a low level. Don't go through the motions. This is game speed. Train on the edge. This is what it's about. And they buy into it.
So when does the men's team come into play?
So during this time, in the back of my head, I knew I would have a men's team. I was going to make it happen because I knew there's so much talent in our area. But I had to figure out what was I going to do to convince the administration that we needed a men's team. Well, I said, I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to get men's on campus and show the need for a men's program. So I started a 7-a-side league. I created a 7-a-side league, men's, women's, and co-ed. I had teams for the men's from Covelo, Kelseyville, Upper Lake, Lakeport, Boonville, Willits, all traveling to come play. Hillsburg and Santa Rosa, playing in our 7-a-side league, men's players. So I just simply email my administration, hey, you should come out, check out this fundraiser we got going, men's league, women's league, co-ed league, and we'd play once a week. And the men's would say play on a Thursday night and come out on a Thursday night. And it was packed with men's players. And we'd have 12 teams playing in our men's division alone. And just stayed on them. And so in 2013, they said, hey, Shane, I think we should start a men's program. I go, yeah, I know we should.
That's a great idea, guys. I would have never thought.
Why didn't I ever think about that?
So here's what we got to do. So we formed a committee and did all the stuff that you got to do. And I was a part of all that. And we started a program that started in 2014. And then the rest is history. And then I coached the women's and men's for 2 years. And then we let go of the women's program. And our last year, we won conference. And I don't even know if they won a game since we've left. They've struggled getting players and having players right now currently on the women's program. And then I went with the men's program. I probably stuck with the men's program a couple years too long. What ended up happening eventually, I did a lot. I mean, I raised about $25,000 to $30,000 a year for both men's and women's soccer programs every year.
And that's through just these fundraisers?
Yeah, how do you fundraise?
Yeah.
So I would run the 7-a-side leagues in the spring and summer.
So it's like a buy-in league you pay and then you get to play? Okay.
They pay $300 per team.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's good money.
So that's $30 a player approximately if they have 10 players. And then I would bring in, I started the MCSA. And so I started on campus. I went through the administration, my athletic director, and I want to bring people on our campus. People even in Ukiah, Covelo, when they say they come play in this league, they didn't even know this existed. Let's get people on campus. So I started the MCSA youth program, the Eagles, and I started grassroots. I started U6 and U8. That's all I started. And then I'd have my players and we'd volunteer and we'd get them out on there and they would pay to be a part of it. And we would raise money for the program. And then obviously raise money to buy equipment and stuff for the little kids. So that's how the grassroots started. And then we started, I had two girls teams come up to me and say, hey man, we're a Ukiah Pumas team and we don't have a league to play in. Can you help us? It's like, man, we weren't planning on starting a team, but let me see what I can do. So I checked into NorCal Premier. I called Benjamin Zemer, who's the president of it. And I said, listen, man, I got 2 girls teams. How do I get these kids involved in your NorCal Premier League? And he goes, well, you have to have this license. You have to have this experience. You have to have this nonprofit. And the big thing, you had to be a nonprofit. You had to have your own nonprofit if we wanted to have these kids have a chance to play in this league. So then I went to my AD and I said, listen, I'm going through the college now, but I think I'm gonna have to go a nonprofit and go with my own nonprofit because that's the only way these kids can play in this league. And I showed them all the stuff and the AD at the time said, all right, let me run it by my admin, So they went by and the administration said, yeah, no problem. So then what I did is that money went to that nonprofit for the Eagles, the MCSA, and then I would just give money back to the men's and women's program. So we're still giving like $2,000 or so each session to the programs. And then one day there's a transition of ADs and the interim AD came in and says, hey, you're gonna have to start paying to use the facilities. And I was like, wow, I already ran this by everybody. Like, what happened? I don't know. They want to pay. Well, how much is it? And I'm like, well, I don't really know. I'm like, what do you mean? How do you not know when you're telling me to pay? And then I go, we start next week. Like, where am I supposed to take the kids? I have nowhere to take them. It's like, you're going to just boot us off? I said, do you know how much time and energy? And I go, and I explained to him, I was like, we're creating rapport. We're creating relationships with our community. I go, don't they understand that? I go, I'm getting kids. I had parents come and tell me. The kid was 10 years old, and the mom says, you know what? I just want to let you know my daughter knows what she's going to do. And I was like, what are you talking about? She goes, yeah, she says when she graduates from high school, she's going to play with Coach Huff at Mendocino College women's program and go to school and graduate from Mendocino College, and then she's going to transfer to UC Davis.
Damn.
That
must feel so good.
That was the impression. You know, that was the impact that we were having on these kids.
Mm-hmm.
And they just pulled the rug out. And the AD told me that, hey, we're going to, I love your story. You're right. I get it. You know, I'm kind of in a tough spot because I'm not the AD. I'm the interim. I can't really advocate. And I was like, I don't need you. Just let me talk to them. Let me explain the story, why, how all this came about, and the good that it's bringing. And I mean, we'd have hundreds and hundreds of kids on campus in the evenings, and parents were walking the track. Community members.
Yeah.
It was just brilliant. And just great stories about these kids became, I know my kids cried when I said, we can't go to Mendocino College anymore. They cried but that's our home. That's where we play. That's where we're going to go to school. I go, I know, honey, but we can't do it anymore. So I was supposed to have a meeting with them, and at the time, the vice president of the college, she told Matt that and again, I don't know if this is true from the AD at all, but supposedly was going to meet with me and let me explain why. And they never did contact me. They just sent me a bill of what it was. And that's when I kind of stepped back and I realized this is never going to go full time. If that's what they're going to do to me, all the hard work we put in and what we changed for the women's program, what we're doing for the college. And I mean, Izzy, I would live on that field, filling holes, filling it with sand. I mean, that field was pristine because we worked hand in hand with the maintenance operations. We cared just as much as everybody else did. And we worked hard and we wanted something special. And I knew that was, you got to put in the work, and that's what we did. And I, at that particular time, I knew it would never go full time, because if they're willing to just pull the rug out and just kind of just turn their back on you on something like that, then they're not going to make this job full time. So then I was kind of looking, and I was a finalist for the Las Positas job. And I applied for Santa Rosa JC. I was a finalist. No, I'm sorry, I wasn't a finalist for them. But I ran a session and for the women's job there. Just nothing ever really worked out. And so then the high school and people started kind of hearing, because of the MCSA, that, I was kind of looking to maybe, I need a full-time job. If anything ever happened to my wife or anything, I needed something to be able to take care of my family, and part-time's no insurance, nothing.
Yeah.
So I interviewed. The Ukiah Unified School District has been phenomenal. The administration at UUSD, the administration at Ukiah High Schools, it's like a family. And that's what I'm used to. That's what I was used to at Cibola High School. That's what I was used to at Fort Lewis College. That's what I was used to at Cal State Bakersfield. I mean, it was a really different environment at Mendocino College. And then when I went to the high school, it kind of brought that family and joy back. Because I was kind of hurt by what happened there and disappointed with how things happened there. And so I took the job in 2017 for the high school and full time. And I continued to coach the men's, but I was working with Coach Pepe Hernandez for him to get some experience. So that's why I held on to it, so he could take it over and get the experience. I thought it'd be great for a local kid, and a kid that I really like a lot and has a good passion and good heart for kids. That way he would do a good job. And so I worked with him, and then he got a full-time job. And so then I ended up having to do more than what I could do with a full-time job at the high school. So I think I held on maybe a couple years too long, because I just was spread too thin, running a club, teaching full-time, coaching high school.
Yeah, you got a lot
coaching,
going on.
Yeah, just too much. So I officially resigned this last December from the college. And it's probably going to be my last hurrah at the college level. And And so I'm a little disappointed in that because I never did reach my full potential. I feel like a goal, not potential, and getting a head coaching full-time job at the college level. But one thing I can say, and just like I tell all my student athletes, it's not that you don't reach your goals, because that happens. It's the process. Did you give everything you had to do it? And I can look people in the eye, shake their hands, and say I gave my best effort, and I'm proud of that, and that's okay. And so I'm teaching at the high school, and I enjoy it. I mean, obviously this COVID stuff's thrown a big wrinkle in things.
I bet.
Running the little youth academy, Brian Barrett at Pomalita, at the entire Ukiah Unified School District, and Ukiah, the administration, the athletic director, Stephen Summers at the high school they're people that are your colleagues, right? They treat you right and you do good. And it's been a real big pleasure to work with people that believe in you and respect you and work alongside of you to do the right things for the kids. So I've really enjoyed that relationship again that I felt I lost. So that's been a really cool thing to be a part of. And so now we're working through COVID. We're working through getting through a high school season potentially in the next couple weeks is going to happen. We're headed in that direction. New orders just came out this afternoon. So we're going to probably have a high school season as soon as we get under 14 or under cases per 100,000. We're at about 23 right now, but we're trending down. So that'll be in the red tier for us. And I'm happy for the kids because they deserve more than what we're able to give them right now.
Definitely.
And then I'm still working with the club, and I've got great people involved with that, with Hector Toscano, Felipe Chavez, Joe Munoz, Ian Fitzpatrick, all my other coaches, the MCSA board with Mark Zekiel and Melissa Galicia and Jennifer Hofstetter and Naomi Rhodes. There's just on and on. Claudia Pedersen. There's just good people. And Claudia is a Mendocino athletic director back in the day one time. She helps out a lot with our club. So I think our club's headed in the right direction. We got some wonderful people going, and we're getting through COVID. We're offering some cool things for some kids throughout COVID, social distancing stuff. But now we're able to start to have a little bit more contact and get out and play a little bit more. And I know the kids are enjoying that. And we're just, again, providing opportunities for kids. That's kind of all in a nutshell. I will give some shout outs to our MCSA. We've had a kid that's been invited to a U14 national team camp who trained for us, started his playing career with us, part of an academy program now. We had another kid that grew up playing with us. He tried out for an academy in Arizona, Living Academy, only non-DA developmental academy soccer player to try out, and he made it. And living in his dream and playing at a high level, but he got it from us, the grassroots level with us.
Sweet.
We have about 11 kids, part of the PDP program, professional development program with NorCal, 2008 girls, a 2010 girl, and a 2007 boy. And we have some high school players that are part of the state pool. Again, all of this would have never happened for these kids if we didn't provide these playing opportunities with MCSA. We have kids and programs on the coast. If you guys are interested in coaching, I'll sign you up and impact some young kids over on the coast. But we have satellite programs on the coast and satellite programs in Willits. We started some advisory committees, which Izzy's been a part of. We'd love for you to join, Gabe. Wanting to learn and share ideas between all our smaller communities to make a bigger and better difference in Lake County, in North County, on the coast, and Ukiah. Ukiah High School is going to have a soccer-specific field with lights, with 2 9v9 fields, turf here in the next year. Was part of that committee for the last 2 years, and that's going to happen.
That's for sure going to happen?
100%.
Sweet. That's awesome to hear.
Who funds that?
That was off a tax base, and I can't remember the what it was. It's a bond. Mm-hmm. And so the people in Mendocino County or in the school had to vote on it, and they voted to pass it.
Gotcha.
So it was a really cool experience to be a part of the committee on how to get that going, and I was kind of the why we needed it. And at first it was going to be just turfing the football field, and I explained to them this is why we need our own field and more space for PE, more space for the soccer kids in our community. There isn't one soccer specific field in Mendocino County. turf field. We can't play year round. And again, our kids are competing with all these bigger clubs south of us that have turf fields, that have lights, they're playing, training. High school, we start off great in the high school season when we have, before it starts to rain, and then
football just mucks it up.
That mucks it up, right? And then we're on the blacktop. And then we train for an hour, 40 minutes, because we don't have lights to train under for high school.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And we're trying to compete against Montgomery, who gets 2 hours on turf fields, right? Pioneer, 2 hours. Everybody has their own turf field, and it's not unrealistic, right? And how do you build a program with any excitement if you don't have something for the kids to hold on to? And so I was able to be a part of that and show the why, the need for the children and the kids in this community of this is why this is important. And the school district and the high school, the athletic, they've all just been wonderful and supportive of it. The voters voted for it and see the need. So, it's, I can show you guys a picture of it at the end of this meeting, what the field's going to look like.
Are these going to be at the high school, or is this going to be in a separate
No,
area?
it's at the high school, just north of the track stadium field. So
like where people play men's league right there, is going to be turfed out?
Yeah, but not in that general area.
Gotcha.
It's going to run east-west, and it's not going to be north-south where they play.
Okay.
That'll be where football continues to practice. And then there'll be a soccer field that runs east-west. It'll be 74 by 116 and yard field. Mm-hmm. And then it'll be 2 parallel
smaller fields in the half?
9v9 fields on each half.
That's awesome. With lights?
It'll have lights.
Dude, that's a dream, man.
Is this going to be like a complex that you guys can like rent out to, let's say, like local leagues that want to play in it as well and stuff?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
That's the way to do it.
That's awesome. And that's where MCSA is going to train at?
Some of the time, yeah, for sure. Yeah, and especially winter, especially. We train at Pomolita right now, and we're kind of bursting out of the seams. We're just getting too big, so we need some more area.
Yeah.
We're also got things in the works. We're working on grant money. We're trying to raise money to build a soccer complex here. I think the economic impact of doing something like that is really great for our community. I think already we're making an impact in our club, not just for kids, but we're really a positive impact on developing money for the community. People are spending money from outside the area when they come in. We have people coming from all over Northern California to come play home games here. And we also have teams from Humboldt, because we're the furthest north that NorCal will have teams come to. So Humboldt County has some teams. Well, they come here to play. And where do they stay in the night? In our hotels. Where are they spending their money? In our restaurants.
Yeah.
So if we can get a complex, 4 to 6 field complex, I can start hosting some tournaments. I can host men's league, women's league, co-ed leagues, 7-a-side leagues, our own recreational league. It'll pay for itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what I do. I've ran leagues my whole life wherever I've been, and just look at Mendocino College, where I ran the 7-a-side leagues.
Huge success.
Huge success.
Yeah.
And that was only for 2 months out of the year, and you're raising $30,000. So the potential's here, and I think our community needs it. Our kids need it. They need safe environments to play. We have a rendition that you guys saw with a little clubhouse with classrooms so kids can come do their homework and go out and just play street ball. I got a few things I got to tick off my list before I call it a career on that. And like I tell Hector and Felipe and them, it's like, once I can get that done, I'll just be the guy that mows the lawns. They can run everything else.
Yeah.
So,
that's the goal, to be able to work to a position to where you can just tell people what to do and just sit back,
Yeah.
Oh, I won't even be telling. They'll be telling. I'll be just mowing the lawns.
Yeah. You'll be watching the fruits of your labor.
Exactly. So, and that's kind of the final piece. If you think about when you work to do the things you do, I think the biggest, and if you get in this profession, you're not going to get rich, but you're going to get rich with love, and you're going to get rich with a lot of satisfaction on seeing the young people that you worked with throughout the years have a lot of success in life, and you played a small part in their lives to help them kind of reach their goals of whatever that might be. And when I see Hector and I see you guys doing what you're doing, and I see Felipe coming back, Caitlin Diaz, who played for me at the women's as a teacher at the middle school, Taylor coaching at Humboldt State. I have one of my other players, Amanda. She's coaching at her alma mater. She played for me 2 years as a keeper, and she's now
in Indiana.
Indiana.
Yeah.
She's coaching there.
Saw
You know,
that.
so we're seeing a lot of things take place and kids moving on that they otherwise wouldn't. I have kids come up to me, Coach, I just want to thank you. Lupita Vargas from Esparto. I drive over there to those high school games and talk to them after their games in the middle of nowhere. And Valentine, and she, you know, flat out said, I wouldn't have went to college if I didn't meet you. So if I wouldn't have drove over there and see her and talk to her and convince her and her family to let their little daughter come over here to play, she wouldn't have graduated from Sac State. You know, so those stories for me are great. And when you see the kids come back to your own community like Caitlin has and like these two young men have, and now they're giving back and making a difference in kids' lives, that's what you're most proud of. That's what's most rewarding out of anything that you can ever do. And that's what, again, for me, what keeps me going.
That's awesome. What a great story.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, I wanted to ask, because I remember when I was at Mendocino College and when you finish up your second season and you're in that process of trying to get recruited to colleges, you know, to move on to the next level. I remember I shot out an email to University of Washington, and the assistant coach replies, he's like, hey, Ismail, like, I'm glad you reached out to our program. I'm glad you're interested. It's like, I know Shane Huff. I played under Shane Huff. I forget his name. You might know his name.
Jeff Rowland.
And he's like, I played under Shane Huff at University of New Mexico. He's played a huge, he was a huge figure in my life, athletically and after. I want to tell that story because I think that's a great story.
Yeah, he's kind of a Shane Huff type mentality. You know, you didn't have a lot of people looking at him. And he was a walk-on at University of New Mexico. And so it was during my second year where I took a less of a leadership role as an assistant coach and recruiter. And so I wouldn't travel with him to games. I stayed and I worked with the red shirts. And so he was a red shirt. And so I trained him and I worked and we worked and we worked all season long. And he wasn't getting any looks. And I keep telling the coach, like, Fish, man, you got to give this kid a shot. You know, listen, I know he's not pretty. I know he's not flashy. He's not polished. I says, but he's like a Borghetti. He's in the right place at the right time.
Forward.
Mm-hmm. He knows how to score. And he's mean. And he's not afraid. And so at the end of the year, we go and to playoffs. And we weren't supposed to. But we did, and we went and played Tulsa at Tulsa, and we were terrible. And the only reason why I got into the NCAA playoffs, it was our first year.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like our first year at UNM, so we didn't really have a full recruiting class, right?
Yeah.
And Jeff worked his butt off, and all season long, never missed a training session. Great student as well. And I go, you got to take this kid, give him a shot. You know, he wants to do it. So they took him to Tulsa, and he got a couple shots at some games there, but he played and he scored 2 goals in the Tulsa game, and we won. We won our first NCAA playoff game with Jeff Rowland scoring the goals as a walk-on. And again, it was just a kid that that you believe in, and a kid that believed in what we were doing, and I didn't do a whole lot. You know, he did it. He just put in the work, right? I mean, he just was in the weight room. He was at every training. He ran extra. He'd stay after practice and work on his free kicks. He would work on me just laying the ball across the goal and letting him run onto it with his runs. I mean, he just worked and worked before practice, during practice, and after practice. He's a testament on what it means to make it. A kid that was not recruited at all and didn't have a high profile. He's from New Mexico, from Albuquerque. Didn't play on a big club team either in Albuquerque, and not that Albuquerque, New Mexico is very big for a ton of different teams, you know, so there's like 1 or 2 high quality teams. I mean, he wasn't part of the big picture, but he wanted it. And the kid gets drafted and he plays in the MLS. You know, he played pro for, 3 or 4 years.
Jesus.
And, so just a great young man, great kid, real positive. And now he's with Jamie Clark. And so when I was at University of New Mexico, I was an assistant there. And then my second year, as I just was in graduate school and took a back seat, Jamie Clark came in, and Carl Juno was with me my first year as well. And after their stint as an assistant coach at UNM, Clark went with Bobby Clark, who was the longtime Stanford coach and then University of Notre Dame coach. He went and worked with his dad. His dad won a national championship towards the end of his career, and probably mid 2000s, somewhere around there. Clark got a head coaching job at Creighton University. He did well there, and then he is now the head coach at University of Washington. And Roland went with him to Creighton, and Roland went with him to University of Washington. So one day, Roland will be a head coach because that's the path he's chose. He's been an assistant coach at the D1 level for quite a while. And then Carl Juneau got a head coaching job at Harvard University and coached there for 4 or 5 years. And now he's living with his wife in Australia, doing something completely different other than coaching. I talk to him every so often. But yeah, so if you want that path, you got to be driven, you got to be goal driven, you got to work hard.
Yeah. I think it's so crazy how small the soccer world is, because it's like you, Jeremy Gunn know each other, Simon Tobin know each other, and it's like you guys coach players that played under you guys, and you guys have the similar philosophy, and you guys branch out. Like you said, they went to Creighton on the East Coast, and then coaches over there. It's like I email this coach. That's really the only reason I got into San Bernardino is because my coach knew you.
Yeah, and I spoke to him too.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense.
He called me.
I say that because I was in his office one time and I saw like 150 emails that he gets a day.
Yeah.
And he's like, the only reason I opened yours was because it said Mendocino College. He's like, I know Shane. I watched his film. I liked his film, and then gave him a call. But that was literally it, just because
Yeah, we did a coaching course together.
So he said, he was like, we did a coaching course, and he was like, it's like you show up and you don't know anyone else there. I just kind of gravitated towards Shane because I like the style. We had similar styles, and then you guys were just kind of hanging out the whole time. That's what he said.
Yeah, a lot of, and again, like I've told Felipe and Pepe and Hector and a lot of the young coaches, it's like you got to network, and one of the best ways to network is get out and do those coaching education courses. And unlike most of the other sports, soccer is very high demanding coaching profession in regards to the standards that they set. The United States Soccer Federation, they have their grassroots level coaching, and they have their D, their C, their B, their A, and now they have a master's coach and a pro A. And so I'm at my national B, and my goal is I'll get my youth A. That's my next one. And I don't want to go youth pro. I'm not youth pro. I don't want to go a pro A license because I don't want to do that. But I'll get my youth A. But you meet a ton of people. When I did my national B, I lived in Casa Grande, Arizona, at the Real Salt Lake Living Academy, where they had kids from all over the world playing and living and training there full time. And my roommate was a general manager of a first tier top division professional team out of Brazil. Guys and ladies from all over the world attend these courses to get their coaching license. And there's about a 50% fail rate. So I think there was 38 people there, and I think 19 of them or 18 of them failed. It's not easy. And that was the same with my national C. It was there was about 38 to 40 people, and there was about 50% fail rate.
What changes from like D to C to B to A? Like, what do you need to learn?
Yeah, there's progression there. So it's like, your grassroots level are just little kids, and then when you start getting to the D, it starts talking about the 11-a-side, and it's progression in regards to like how complex sessions get. So you're like, your D license would be like maybe U16 level, C license maybe up to like a U18, U19 mindset. And then once you start to get to your B and A, you're looking like you're working with U20, U23 level type players. So then your training sessions are more tactically oriented. How do you train and work off a number 10 in the attacking third? And you have to build a training session off of that. It's really intense. I was there for 9 days away from home, or 10 days. And it's literally 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. constant work. And you got homework at night. And then at the end of it, you have a written exam, an oral exam, and a practical exam where you have to go run a session. And you have everybody watching you, and you have some random group of kids that you've never coached before. You're having to run the session. Now they've changed it now, but it's the same setup, but now they come to you to run your session.
Dang.
Gotcha.
But it's intense. It's definitely intense.
I bet. I feel like it'd be nerve-wracking just having a bunch of people sitting there watching you.
It is nerve-wracking. It definitely is. And I know my B, I didn't do really good on my first practical session. I didn't feel good about it. I felt like crap. I thought, man, if I don't do something, I'm going to fail. And so they asked me about midway through, hey, does anybody want to run a session on this topic for the group? And I immediately put up my hand because I knew I had to, because I didn't like my first one.
Right.
And
Did you have like an idea of what you were going to do for that session?
No, they give you the topic.
Gotcha.
And then you got to build it off their topic. And that's what I did. And then it was a good session. So
What was your topic?
I can't remember. Shoot, this was in 2013.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Dang, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we basically talked about everything.
Yeah.
And more. Do you have any questions for us before we finish?
No, I just want to just reiterate what I said. I think you guys provide a great service. I think you guys are doing a phenomenal job. I'm proud of you, Izzy, Gabe. I told Hector this. I've not met you, but just watching you and how professional you are on your podcasts, you're a good man and doing good things, and you're gonna have a bright future.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Do you have any questions before we finish?
No, I got everything.
I feel like we should just kind of finish it off with, if you have any advice for younger kids that are trying to break into that collegiate scene, like what advice do you have for them? What worked for you? What have you seen doesn't work for kids that you've also brought into your program as well? Like what should they do?
What I tell kids is number one is character and attitude. If you're not going to be coachable, because I've worked even at Mendocino College, man, I had some talented kids, but they were not coachable. They just did not want to be coached. They did not want to listen. Did they move on? They did not move on. Coaches want to know if you're coachable. That's number one. That's the first thing they ask. What's their personality like? Are they coachable? Do they work well with others? Number two, what is their work ethic? You know, do they want to put in the work? Are they mature? Are they going to be a problem in the classroom? Are they going to show up to classes? I think just a work ethic is and then number three, do they have the grades? So they don't even talk.
That's huge. Grades are huge.
They don't talk about, if you're not good at the first two,
they're not going to consider.
Yeah. You know, obviously the player comes in there too. So it's probably, character, coachable, work ethic. Are they, what type of style of player there? Because there's needs at colleges, and then grades, right? So you have to hit those four. And if you don't hit those four on those ticks, then they just stop. They don't have, they like you saw, the emails, they got thousands of kids that they're reaching out. And the biggest advice to all these young kids is be persistent. Don't have excuses for yourself. Don't point at somebody else and this is the reason why you didn't succeed. And it doesn't mean you're going to reach your full potential, the goal that you set for yourself. It's the process in which you get there that you learn and become the best that you can be. I didn't become a head coach at a JC like I was hoping to in regards to a full-time job. Doesn't mean I failed. I gave everything I had, and I gave a lot to a lot of people. And I'm proud of that. I gave it a good shot, so I can be proud of what I did, even though I didn't reach that ultimate goal, right? And same in playing. If you don't make it, it doesn't mean you failed. But did you give everything you had? And you have to work. You can't show up to practice twice a week and think that that's enough. You have to put in time on your own. You have to have a good nutrition, good sleeping habits. You have to work when nobody's watching. That's what I tell everybody. Work when nobody's watching. When you're at training, train on the edge. Don't go through the motions. No coach should ever have to tell you to step it up. It should be automatic. Train on the edge. And have a growth mindset. Want to learn, want to grow, want to be the best you can. But don't ever be outworked. Because if you have a great work ethic, you will find a home. There's a place for everybody out there. And I think you saw that, how many opportunities are out there for kids to be found. Tons. And if you put in the work, I'll help you and I'll find you a home. You don't need to go to these big spending clubs to do it. I'll help you because I know the process, and I want to share. I want you to get there, but you're going to have to show me you want to get there. And Adrian Guyona, who you all know, is a kid that I said, if you want me to help you, show me you want it. You had 2 years to show me you wanted it, and you didn't put in the work that I needed you to put in. What makes you different now? Kid's mature. He's matured a lot. He's been putting in the work every single night. So you know what I've been doing? Calling. I want to see him go on. He deserves it. At the right environment, the right place. Because he's been putting in the work. If you put it in, I'll help you. And if you didn't do it for me your first 2 years, that's okay. I'll help you. I'll help you now. Because kids and people change. And we grow and mature.
Absolutely.
So
Well, Shane, that was great advice. We really appreciate your time. We probably kept you longer than we expected.
Yeah, I think I'm going to get chewed out by my staff. We have a staff meeting right now because of COVID being lifted. So that's okay.
Just blame Izzy. It's okay.
Yeah, that's my fault. Miscommunication right there. Great example. But thank you so much for joining us. Everybody at home that made it this far, thank you so much for tuning in or listening. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure you leave us a rating and review. And we'll catch you guys next week.
Peace.